Okay, we're doing a podcast today, and I'm terrible at intros, so we'll just stick with that. I want to do this semi-periodically with Macross fans and talk about Macross in various details with various questions for people, and to just talk about various subjects in the Macross universe, and go into the lore, go into details, stuff like that. Now, today I've got a couple homeboys here. One that I talked to on session quite a bit, and one of his buddies from I guess a Discord chat, and we're on
Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
bad. I don't use either of those things. I'm on Gab and Minds where I'm doing stuff. If you look there, you'll find some interesting things. I'll just say that. But I wanted to bring in fans of Macross. I don't care about if people are famous or whatever. If you want to talk, let's have a conversation. Let's have a serious discussion. Let's go into the deep lore. Let's, talk about how Macross II is canon. Because I always have to say that. I always have to say that. Macross II is canon. And anybody who says it isn't can go fuck off. And cussing is okay. I perfectly fine with cussing. But anyway, our first topic for today is going to be our thoughts on the second Delta movie. Because it's the newest thing, and of course, if you look at all my videos, you'll notice that my two most watched videos are my Zettai Life spoilers video review and my Zettai Life discussion spoilers video, where I talk about various things. So, which both have over one of them is I think they're both around 1,600 views now. I think the original review spoiler video is much higher than that. I think it's 1,700 or something. But I want to start there, and then we're going to move into various other topics. For the agenda, at least, so everybody knows what the agenda is going to be, we're going to talk about Delta Zettai for a little bit. Then we're going to talk about Delta as a series overall and impressions of the series. Then we're going to move into talking about how we got into Macross and our original starting points, where we started and how we got to this point. And then of course I have a special little Q&A session for me, because I did the official chronology. I've got the deep lore understood, so I'll be getting some questions from our guests today, and then we're going to at the end we're going to give our recommended series for noobs to Macross. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about Macross Delta Zettai. First, let's have Andrew discuss his thoughts on Zettai. Specifically Zettai. Let's talk about the second movie specifically first.
All right. I mean, for me personally, it's funny, even though Delta started 5 or 6 years ago, seeing the Zettai, it felt like seeing something new and fresh for Macross, for the first time in 10 years. For lack of a better way of putting it. Just especially because, the Delta TV felt like the ending felt like a rehash of Frontier's ending, but without the hype. But I was really hyped to see it, I guess, too, because I was kind of emotionally invested in the characters, like Valkyrie and the Delta Squad and all that, and so I had fun with the movie. It's funny, when I had it ready, I literally had 2 bags of popcorn and a drink ready, but I was so engrossed in the movie that I didn't even touch the popcorn or drink until after the movie, and by then I was in literal tears.
You didn't want to eat it anywhere. You were just like, ah!
I started to get teary-eyed when, in the middle of the movie, when Freya starts using her life force energy to save
Hayate.
Hayate.
Oh, in that scene where they're singing Diva and Abyss and all. And he goes all berserk.
Yeah, where he goes berserk with the extrasensory perception and like her skin starts to crystallize because then like even though I had seen some spoilers on Pixiv and the cover art too, like where Hayate is like holding Freya in his arms. Like I'd seen artwork like that, so I knew like in the back of my mind I knew Freya was probably going to die, but when you see her make that start to kind of give away her life energy and collapse into like go unconscious, that's when it like really hit me that oh my god, they're really going to kill this character on screen and all that by the end of the movie. Like that's just when it hit me, and I was literally like teary eyed and going, "Oh no, Fred, don't do that." Like I was literally like saying stuff like that out loud. And then another part that really hit me, was when they started singing that song.
Alive in Norinuta.
Yeah,
Oh
and
god, that song. Fuck.
when Freya when it gets to the lyrics about using music to express the joy of being alive, because not to get too personal and dark, but back in like the early 2010s, like I was like really depressed and like borderline suicidal. And one of the things that helped get me through the darkness was just the simple joy of listening to Macross music and rewatching, Frontier and other Macross stuff. So those lyrics like hit me personally because, because of that, because it made me think of my suicidal times, a dozen years ago. So, and then of course, the death scene where they have their little marriage, and then Freya just passes away. I definitely started to cry a lot at that moment, and it reminded me a lot of when I watched Darling the Franxx the first time. Like I cried my eyes out at that ending as well. And it's hard to say which anime I cried harder at. I know when I cried at Darling the Franxx, like I had binge watched the series like in 2 days. Literally, I timed it so that I was able to see like the final episode or catch up to the final episode as it premiered. But with Delta, it was kind of a different story because I was invested in the characters for 5 to 6 years, and even at some jobs, like I was working at dishwasher at several places, and how pass the time I would use an MP3 player. And I remember when Delta came out, I started like getting hooked on their music, and I would listen to like the Valkyrie songs like every day for several years. So I was like heavily invested in the characters and the lore, and I think that's part of just what made the ending so emotional for me.
Okay, so like the movie like invoked a lot more emotion in you than probably a lot of people would have had, right?
Yeah.
So that does, that does kind of, make things a little more, powerful when you're watching some of those scenes throughout the movie. It can really hit you.
Yeah. And emotional stuff aside, what another thing that I loved about the movie was that it seemed to kind of be in a kind of a yin and yang to Macross Do You Remember Love in some ways. Like the in Do You Remember Love, what was the villain's name? The Bedolza.
Yeah,
I don't want to use the correct pronunciation, but I remember when he wanted to, there's the moment where he says, fire the main cannon, and the subordinate is like, but we got a bunch of ships in the way.
And he's like,
and
well, his whole attitude don't care.
His whole attitude was he doesn't care. And but Ian Cromwell is the total opposite, and he says, oh, everyone abandoned ship and all that, and he doesn't want to kill his crew in the process of using the main gun, and also too, like, Do You Remember Love had the moment where they're put in the little prisoner pods, and Hikaru and Minmay are separated, and they're both, their hands are on the glass and whatnot, and stuff like that just kind of reminds me of like what they did with Freya when they put her in the little pod for a bit, and Hayate is crying, and he's got his hands pressed against the glass. So I mean,
I didn't even
there's still,
think about that. That's an interesting thought. I never thought about it that way.
yeah,
Shit.
because I was rewatching bits of Do You Remember Love the other day, and just stuff hit me that I'm like, okay, these two movies are kind of like almost in a conversation. Like they're taking similar ideas, but they're doing it in you know they're taking it in a different direction. Like the glass thing and all that. And then they did have the in Zeta. There's the moment where Arad and Max are chilling out and eating, and they have like the aquarium and stuff like that, which was kind of cool. But
Did you get
you know,
did you understand the insinuation by what they're eating?
oh yeah, because I thought one of them was gonna die,
Oh,
especially when
everybody
he
thought
comes up
somebody was going to
to,
die in that scene. Because anybody who knows the original Macross TV series, we know pineapple salad is the
yeah,
death of Roy and steak is the death of Kakizake. All it means is people are dying.
but
And so,
but what I was gonna say is like I thought it was kind of cool how I mean how they had the um, the scenery with the fish and all that, and I think they were kind of trying to harken back to like the Do You Remember Love bar scene where there's Roy and the glasses light up and all that. But I think Do You Remember Love definitely takes the cake because they had like that cool prism effect. Like and it's amazing how they did it back in those days with the anime with the celluloids and all that. Because that's the thing. Like, Do You Remember Love? Like, the amazing thing is just to watch it and ponder like how did they actually make that with all like the human effort into it. Whereas like the Zettai, it still looks beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but when you see it in CG, you're like, oh, the CG computer did most of the work, and
and a lot of it's copy paste.
yeah, and it doesn't have that magic that Do You Remember Love has, um, in my opinion. But the two movies are definitely kind of like a yin and yang in many ways. The more I think about it, like especially like the both have the intro shots where it's you know in Do You Remember Love it was Exodol and Braytai, and then in Zettai it's Ian Cromwell and the
Sydney Hunt.
Sydney Hunt. I wish that they would have the Burger Stone in place, but they recast a different character because of the voice actor death. So
Yep, same thing they did with Ernest because, well, Ernest's voice actor was also the voice actor for Gold, so, he was being recast in a different Zentradi character for Delta,
yeah,
but, that one, I think, they did what they could with, the situation with Ernest VA dying and stuff, that they knew they had no choice but to use Max. Kawamori knew it. I think he knew the minute he found out that. I think he had to rewrite the story because of that. Because I think they were planning the movie before, and they were still planning it when he died, and they had to rewrite it because now there was no Ernest Johnson. Although they did have the scene at the beginning to give a nod to him, so at least they did that. But
yeah. I loved Ernest as a character in the TV show. Especially when there was moments where like he was talking about how we might be ordered to kill Mikumo when she goes when she gets mind controlled and all that, and he does this thing with his hat where he hides his eyes, to I guess hide the fact that he's sad and whatnot, and
that he doesn't want to make that decision.
yeah, and I love too how during the funeral scene he came with that fancy outfit, that fancy white tuxedo and hat.
Oh, for
Um,
Messer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but still, I think that having Max and Exodol was I think in a way improved things. And I remember showing the movie to um, this person at my Airbnb. She had never heard of Macross before, but I knew she was a Star Wars fan, and I was able to make the reference or metaphor and say like, this is like Harrison Ford or Han Solo and Chewbacca showing up, and it had a similar vibe, of Mac. Basically, the Gigasun is is like a Millennium Falcon, and Max and Exodar, Han and Chewbacca, basically, you know.
Okay, Jason, what were your thoughts of the Delta movie, the second Delta movie?
Okay, well, Andrew covered a lot of what I thought already, so I will try and cover some of the stuff that
He
that
didn't
I
say.
was kind of different. Yeah, well, I want to cover some of the different aspects that I liked, and some of the things that maybe I could probably say I didn't like so much. But overall, I am going to say I loved this movie. I absolutely loved it. Where everywhere that Delta had failed in the previous movie and in the TV series, this more than made up for.
A lot of people felt that way, even in Japan.
Yeah, and what I first found interesting, I mean, I kind of knew this before watching it, but when I actually watched it, it really dawned on me that this is the first Macross movie that is not a retelling of the series. This is actually a continuation of something that has not been told before. Every other movie has, even with the Frontier movies, it was always a retelling of the series.
It was always retelling of the War with the Bajra, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember Love? Obviously, was just a retelling of the original 36 episodes. But
no, it was episodes 3 to 24. It was up till the episode I wa Nagareru. That's the summary. Because everything after the episode I wa Nagareru is post-war, and that was not covered in in Do You Remember Love?
Right, but at the same time, it's
a retelling.
It doesn't go into depth like the TV series does, but it does cover what, for the most part, is in the TV series.
Yeah, the main meat of the TV series. Yeah.
Right. But this is something that's, I think, a first for Macross, where it's just a completely new series. And one thing that I had discussed with Andrew earlier on, maybe a month or two ago, was that this series, to me, it almost felt like a standalone movie. Like, you can actually watch this movie on its own, and it feels complete in just that. Now, if you watch the series and you watch the previous movie, then you get the full gist of what this movie is about, and you get that full investment of the characters. But you can watch this movie as a standalone, and it holds up just fine.
I agree with that in most ways. I think the only way that I would say it's kind of hard to, like, that you might need to at least watch the first movie, as bad as it is the backstory to Mikumo. I think that's to get the meat of Mikumo and why, like, certain scenes. I'll explain when I explain my thoughts in a minute, but there's a certain scene that, I think is more powerful once you've watched, either the TV series or the first movie of Delta. But for the most part, I agree with you. Don't think I'm like...
I could see that.
Yeah, cause the Zettai movie never really spells out that Mikumo is like a protoculture clone.
Yeah, just Johan's word. Oh, you're the Hoshino Taite, and she's like, no, I'm Mikumo of Warikire, nothing more, nothing less, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that kind of
that's almost word for word what she says.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just translating off the top of my head because I remember the line. Because I only watch it in Japanese. Like, I did that live streaming it with the English subtitles on, just so people who didn't know, Japanese could actually watch it with me. But whenever I watch it, I never watch it with subtitles. So I'm always in raw mode because I understand all of it. Like sometimes if I don't catch a word or something, I might turn on Japanese subtitles just to check. But other than that, no.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think this movie, just from the TV series through the first movie, like most of the people who watched it and watched all of those really kind of wanted to see the ending of this story. And so when you see them go through this with this new enemy, and everything you think is kind of fixed with Windermere and New UN Spacey, I actually thought that Windermere, for a while after this attack, I thought they were going to blame New UN Spacey or even the what are they? They're not military. They're kind of like
chaos.
They're private military contractors. Yeah, PMC.
Yeah, I actually thought they were going to kind of blame them, and they didn't really go into that. And that's one of the things when I watched it the second time around, I was kind of like, wow, they didn't even question if they brought these people in or not. Or
well,
I thought that was one thing that they probably could have done. It could have gone that way, and they could have maybe resolved that just like a minor problem. But they didn't even address it at all, and I was kind of shocked because usually most countries, most cultures, when you welcome someone in and then something bad happens, whether it's their fault or not, the first people they look at are the people that are standing right in
the I mean, I think part of it was just the movie was at times was just being really tight. Like when Boki is doing his whole like White Knight, lend me your wind. We don't even see where the missiles land. Like, he launches all this whole salvo of missiles, and then it just cuts to like Valkyrie doing this Charlie's Angels, pose. So I mean, I think a big part of that was just the fact that they had to do all this time management because they had the Labyrinth of Time short film in there. I think that if they didn't do that, I think they would have like another 5 to 10 minutes to really
flesh out some stuff.
Yeah,
they should have done like a director's cut version with the release of the Blu-ray and the DVD, but they don't do that. And like what's it just it would have been nice to see if they had some other scenes they cut out. Because I know for a fact that one of the scenes that they put in at the last second, okay, this is a last second decision. This was actually on the DVD, because I don't have the Blu-ray, I have the DVD. What the guy Nemoto actually specifically says is that they were unsure whether to put the scene with Kaname and Messer on the arm of the whatever it is on Ragnar or whatever, the giant Macross.
Oh yeah, the Elysion, yeah.
Yeah, Elysion, right. I don't know why I always forget these names, shit. But that scene, that flashback scene to Messer before she starts singing Giraffe Blues, that was a last minute decision to put it in. He says that very directly. That was a very last minute decision. I watched the spoiler like talk event they had before one of the showings they did in Tokyo last year in like November or something, where he specifically said that. So there was a lot of things that they weren't sure about, like the death of Freya, which they were trying, like they even admitted, he even said it there as well, was that they tried every way to keep her alive. They didn't want to kill her on screen. But then they finally came to the realization that the movie wouldn't work without her dying on screen. So he even says, once Kawamori and the rest of the writing group came to that realization, okay, we need to kill Frey on screen, everything went smoothly. He literally says that. Like, so, all of these things all these decisions were, a lot of it was kind of last minute. Or they couldn't find ways around it.
Yeah, and I think that decision to do that, they had to do that, and I think most fans kind of expected that to happen. Just not only from the previous movie, but just from the TV series too. That like because I remember going through on boards and hearing people talk about oh yeah, well all Hayate has to do is just wait till Freya dies, and then Mirage is right there, and it was just kind of like okay, yeah, everybody kind of expected that at some point Freya was going to die or not live her full 30 years, which is their lifespan. So I think everybody kind of knew that was going to happen, and so but to see it happen
Was a totally different thing.
I think was not something. It's a lot. It's a much darker side, and I don't mean darker and like it's like in a bad way. I mean like darker in the fact that war and the things that you have to go through to accomplish. Sometimes getting rid of an evil thing that's in front of you, or something that's misunderstood and is trying to damage things. Sometimes good has to sacrifice too.
Yep.
And that's the one thing that I noticed early on. The first time I ever watched Do You Remember Love? It's kind of funny because there's this part at the very end. When Minmay is singing Ayokobete Masta.
Yeah.
And there's all this beautiful action that's going on, but at the same time they have these cutscenes of people dying.
Yep. Like the guy getting beheaded right in front of the stinking screen.
Yeah, and I know Kawamori did not want that stuff in there, but it was put in there, and to me it's a beautiful play on things. It's a beautiful song talking about all this this love and this longing for someone, but at the same time there's death and everything around, and it makes it realistic. It makes it really come home.
The contrast really, like I can't watch Do You Remember Love without crying through half the movie. So I like now I've seen it a million times. I can't.
Goes on is crazy.
I can't like Roy's death, as heroic as it is. I don't cry there. You know where I cry? Watching Max and Miria fight. I'm like, oh, Max, Miria. and then the whole scene with Ichijo, Hayase, Mimi in Ichijo's room. God, that scene. Oh my fucking God. And when I get into my little explanation about Zettai Raiben, and I'm going to talk about a little critique of it too, because I don't know if I've mentioned it in a video before, but the Do You Remember Love, I think, is the perfect movie. Like it doesn't matter if it's a live action or animated or what. I think it is the perfect movie. It, from beginning to end, it explains the situations well. It doesn't overbloat you with a bunch of music. It doesn't overbloat you with a bunch of like talking through the entire movie. There's like nice breaks where there's no talking going on, where you can actually feel the atmosphere of the movie. That's such a well-made movie. So,
Yeah, I was about to chime in and say that one of my favorite moments from Do You Remember Love is when, and the most like gut-wrenching is when Claudia asks Hikaru and Misa, she says, did Roy die well? That's all I need to know. And then, they say yes, and there's that silence, and you can just, and like Wilbo's smoking that pipe and looking out the window, and like you can just tell that they've been through so much in the last like month, or was it like 3 months?
It was 1 month.
The car. Oh, okay.
It was 1 month.
But yeah, the last 1 month, you can just tell that they've been through so much. Hellish War and all that, and there didn't need to be any dialogue. It's just the way that the characters act, and just how you can see how they're just so worn down.
Yep, especially at the end. I know. I love that ending scene where Shami is just like sleeping on the console. I love Shami. She is such a little like innocent little girl. Like in that scene where they're in the cafe, where like what Vanessa and Kim are like. I think it was Kim that says when they're talking about Mime and Hikaru's little scandal, and they're like, "Oh, you're just
Yeah.
jealous of them." She's like, and she just shakes her head, yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, that's so fucking cute." I love that scene. I think that is one of the most underrated scenes of Macross, period, that nobody pays attention to. It's just such a cute scene because, you know, in the TV series, the operator girls got so much attention, and because of the way the movie was set up, they couldn't get as much attention. So, you know, having them have that little scene together in the movie is just so wonderful, but that's not Macross Delta. Sorry.
So speaking of the Macross, the bridge operators, what did you think about the one in Zettai that has like the Misa hairstyle?
Oh, when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, I knew you were gonna do something like that, Cowboy, because he always finds ways to put these little Easter eggs in there for fans. And when I saw that girl pop up on screen, I'm like, oh, that's Hayase. I mean, it was just like so obvious. It was just so obvious, like. And there were so many things in Zettai that were, like, if you don't know, like, if you're not well versed in Macross, you would completely miss it. Like, if you didn't know the original TV series, you wouldn't know that pineapple salad and steak are signs of people dying. Let's see, the operator girl looking like Hayase, which she doesn't even have a name, by the way. Because even in the new book, the new source book, they just say the operator girls on the Gigashion. They don't even say their names, which is stupid. Because even for Macross 7, if you look at the character section for Macross 7 in that book,
yeah, they all had individual names, like Sally
even
and,
the twins,
yeah.
even the twins are in one scene or like two scenes in one episode while they're on that planet where the Macross 5 group found them, and they're surrounded by the Proto-Devlin. Like, even the twins have fucking names. It's just like, they gave names to these fucking twins, and they don't give names to the operators on the fucking Gigashion in Zettai. What the fuck are you talking about? Now, I get the fact they don't have a name for the little girl that's on Hayate's shoulders at the very end. I get that. I completely understand that because they want to maybe hide something or they just never thought about it. But perfectly fine because he's only in there for like one scene, right? It's like, what, 30 seconds or a minute or something? I don't mind that, but the operators play an important role in that fucking movie, especially the Hayase looking girl, and they don't give her a name. Just, fuck you guys.
Speaking of the girl at the end of the movie, have you guys seen the movie Thor 4?
No, because I don't watch Marvel.
Okay, do you mind if I spoil the movie for you?
I don't care. Jason, what do you think?
I saw it already, so go for it.
Okay, so I saw Thor 4 in theaters, before I saw Zettai on, Blu-ray. When they start in Zettai, when you start seeing signs of the siren system fetus, for lack of a better description, coming to life and singing and whatnot, like, I just immediately knew, like, something told me, like, oh my god, this is like the Thor 4 movie ending. Because in Thor 4, the main villain, Gore, like, his daughter died, and this god that he used to worship, like, laughed about it and belittled him. And so he goes on this quest to go to this elder god, Eternity, and make a wish that all gods get, wiped out and destroyed. But Thor convinces him. Thor says, no, what you want, you don't want hate, you want love, you want your daughter back. And so he wishes for his daughter to be reborn. And it's not exactly his daughter, like, instead the god Eternity like, basically takes the form of his daughter, and Thor ends up raising him, and Thor's girlfriend at the time dies in his arms, kind of like Freya. And so, like, the just the resemblance of the movie, movie endings are uncanny.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me because the Marvel
scene where
the
where he's, like,
MCU
baking pancakes with a kid.
The MCU is really popular over here, so that wouldn't surprise me if they put that kind of stuff in there.
Well, Zettai came out first, and I think they're basing it on Norse mythology because Zettai was full of Norse mythology, and also what really blew me away about Freya's end was that they really took like the classic Gnosticism story of Sophia and basically used that for Freya. Um,
Even the name Freya comes directly out of Norse mythology too. So
yeah, but the name Freya is like she was the wife of Odin, but Freya's character is more based on the Norse god of apples, Idun, and Idun was married to the god of poetry and music, and that's why they had Hayate. His whole spiel was poetry and whatnot that he inherited from his father.
oh, the single lines that he got from his father in the letters
Yeah,
he
but
received.
that's where they got the idea, I believe, is from the Norse mythology.
Well, they
It wasn't
started that. They
it was
started that with
one-liners.
Macross 30 though, because Macross 30, the enemy group is called Havamal, and we all know what Havamal is in Norse mythology, but so it has no real relation to it. But he's been putting in Norse mythology into this stuff recently, so
Well, yeah. What I mean is the anime creators they like to draw ideas from Norse mythology, and I think that's where they got the idea for the poetry. Is
oh my goddess, oh my
they looked
goddess.
at they looked at how the goddess of apples was married to the god of poetry, and they figured, hey, we can run with this. And the other thing too is if you look at the tale of there's all these paintings about the famous tale about Idun is when she gets kidnapped by this giant eagle, and that's why I think Ian Cromwell's battle Asteria is shaped like an eagle with the feathers and all that.
All the wings and
Is
shit.
the motif to it. But for the Sophia story in Gnosticism, I noticed a ton of parallels in the Zeta movie, and they did a lot of foreshadowing actually because
Oh, they did. There was a
know,
lot of foreshadowing.
yeah, because I was thinking about this the other day. Remember how you frequently see the apple floating in the center of the universe, like in the middle of the movie when Freya is sad, and then also in the opening concert.
Yep. And there's the galaxy inside there.
Yeah, exactly. And the symbol of an apple, like an apple, symbolizes knowledge. And when you look at Gnosticism, like literally, the title they call it Gnosticism, meaning knowledge, or knowledge of where of their spiritual knowledge. And so that was just kind of a wink wink there where they put the apple inside the galaxy spiral. That was a big clue there. And with Gnosticism, it's also a great contrast to the whole protoculture myth because Gnosticism, they believe in Gnosticism, God, we're a reflection of God. We're not a creation of God the Creator. And so there's kind of an interesting contrast where you have the protoculture are the physical God creators that do the genetic splicing and all that. But with the Gnosticism and the Windermerians' belief in going back to the wind, the galaxy spiral, that's more the belief of us being a spiritual or as above, so below. We're a physical reflection of the spiritual being of God, and that's their belief. And in the Sophia mythos, Sophia she created life or was able to get pregnant, like at a virgin birth, and that upset in the Gnostic mythos, like I think they still call him Jesus, or maybe there's like a different name, but there's their Jesus figure is upset about that because there was no male energy in the process, and whatnot, and that was kind of Sophia's sin, and um, and then if I remember correctly, she uh, she breaks off into like a bunch of pieces of light or whatnot. She shares her fragment of light with the world, and then dies and returns to the galaxy spiral. And that's essentially what Freya does when she starts singing, and everyone's room lights up with the flower of life. Like that's an actual symbol of like that's one of the oldest symbols of sacred geometry. That they used.
Well, interestingly, they actually said exactly why they did that, and that was directly related to the song "Runga Hikato Pikato Hikatara." The I think it's the ending for the Delta TV series. They specifically took that and turned that into a reality. That's exactly where they took it from, and I believe it was Nemoto said that. I can't remember exactly where I heard that, but that I'm absolutely sure that that's where they got that idea from. Now, is it related to Norse mythology? I don't know. It could be because they've gone completely crazy with Norse mythology and Macross Delta. But the original idea why they did that was because of that song. That was the original inspiration, and then maybe they found some connection to Norse mythology in there, and then they went further with it.
I'm saying they borrowed a lot of inspiration from different sources in Europe, but they did borrow aspects of Norse mythology and then Gnosticism and all that, and I think it's fitting because the Wintermarians, they look like they're in like Sweden or Norwegian or somewhere in Europe, and there's even the line forgot the exact line, but it was one of the inspirations for the Three Musketeers line where they say, one for all and all for one.
Oh, that. When they raise their hands up and say, go Watakiri or whatever it is.
But there's a famous Latin saying, and I was Googling it a few days ago, and apparently that Latin saying comes from Sweden. And so, I just thought it was fitting because Wintermarian does look kind of like the
European, that North European or that kind
of. But it was more like I think Mikomo said it best when they're grieving over Freya, and she says she says one or 5 for 1 or 1 for 5 or something like that.
Watakiri's
how there'll always be 5 and there'll always be for 1.
Yeah.
Basically, and that's like that. That feeds back into that whole idea of that, and it's also too like part of the whole alchemical belief. Or there was a guy who looked at the symbolism of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and he used that saying, and basically the belief is that you can't really like divide the universe, or you can't really separate it. Like it's inseparable. The whole is inseparable from the a part of it, and that's kind of like what Mikomo is saying, is that like we'll always be Walpuré, we'll always be 5 and we'll always be 1.
Yeah.
See, I just figured that they were kind of taking from the whole the Scandinavian type of countries and everything, because everything in Freya's homeland kind of looked like it was from
Ravenglass.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean, is the Scandinavia countries. Yeah,
I felt like they just all went shopping and just got a bunch of shit back and just set up their little hometown, and they were good to go for the rest of time.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna give my quick thoughts since I did a whole long video on all this shit. I think it's the third best thing in Macross, because we know Macross 2 is number 1 and Do You Remember Love is number 2. And Macross 2 is canon. Can't forget to say that multiple times. Now, I think that why this... So, there's... The thing that got me... So, I'll talk about one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which neither of you have brought up, so it's actually okay. Huh? What happened? Did it freeze? Wait a minute. What's going on here?
Oh no.
Oh, my I froze for a minute. Anyway. So I guess probably didn't pick up what I was saying. Well, actually the recording probably did. It just probably the screen wasn't moving. That's all. But my favorite scene in the movie, which neither of you brought up, is the scene where Mikumo goes in to see Freya when she's in her little capsule. And that scene just... I said it in a video before about how I thought that... Or I said it in the comments section. I didn't say it in a video. I specifically said that to me that was the point where you actually saw the first real emotion from Mikumo. And because... And that's not to say that there wasn't emotion from her in the TV series or in the first movie, as garbage as the first movie is. It's that, like, honest, feelings of sadness. Because when she kind of cries at the end of the first Delta movie, when she jumps down to be with the rest of them, it's tears of joy, right? You don't see her... Like, she's really... Like, from the beginning, like, she's always been very strict with Freya. But, like, and she's always been very cold towards Freya, right? But, like, especially when you watch the first movie where, before they start singing this song, Change, says, if you screw this up, you're out of water, Kyrie. That kind of cold attitude is gone, and you get to really see Mikumo as an individual at this point, not just some, like, rando. And then later when you find out she's a clone of Protoculture, she's not just some, like, machine. And that was one of the comments that I saw somewhere where people were saying that Mikumo, like, this was actually in, it was in a preview from last year where they took the teaser trailers from TV or whatever, and they were analyzing them, and the scene that they used was Mikumo looking at the Protoculture ruins outside, right before Cromwell and them show up, and she's just looking very stoic at the ruins. Well, in the trailer you don't see that she's actually looking at the ruins. You just see her looking up at something. But they used that scene to say, oh, Mikumo's a robot again. It's like, then you know nothing about this stinking movie. And to keep this in mind, I don't know if Jason knows that I actually went to see the movie in the theater 3 times last year. But I didn't go. It was like a month after the premiere, and like I wasn't even really sure about going, because after watching the first movie, I'm like, well, fuck Delta. But then I read a bunch of spoilers online in Japanese. I'm like, Max is in there? It's probably just some, like, glorified, fan service bullshit. And then I read about the ending, and, I'm like, maybe I should go see this. And I stayed up the entire stinking night. Like, I went there after an all-nighter, because the movie started at, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 in the morning, and I had to go to get there, I had to take the train, like, 30 minutes to get to the movie theater. So, I was on 0 sleep, and I went there, I watched the movie, I bawled out, and I'm like, I need to go see this again. I went the very next fucking day, the second time, and I cried even more, and I completely forgot I was going to bring a handkerchief because I knew it was coming, and I completely forgot to bring something that I can, wipe the tears away, and so I was crying even more in the second time. It's like, okay, I'm going the 3rd time, and I went 3 times in 3 days, and I was like, okay, I cannot forget the handkerchief this time, because the movie, just, oh my god. Now, as a critique of the movie, and this goes back to what we were talking about, Do You Remember Love? And I think I've mentioned this in a video before. I can't remember if I know I mentioned it before, though. Was that I thought that one of the bad things about Zettai was that there was no breathing room for any of the scenes. There was always some kind of song being sung. And it was all for promoting Water Curie and them selling CDs, right? Complete commercialism garbage. If you compare that to Do You Remember Love, where it has these scenes, this is a scene what I was going to talk about earlier, but when you compare the scenes in Do You Remember Love, where there's like some break in the conversation, like even when Max sees Miria's helmet come off after they're done, kicking the shit out of each other, and he just looks at her, and you can, before he says anything, you could see the shock on his face, like how beautiful she is, and then he just goes "Utsukushi," and then Miria hears that and she repeats it, and it's the scene has a breathing room. The scene with Minmei, Hayase, and Ichijo in Ichijo's apartment is also, there's a breathing room before Ichijo says that he wants to be with Misa. There's that long pause after the battle's over and Minmei is just staring at, and Minmei and Hayase are just looking at each other. And they don't say a word to each other. Minmei raises the lyrics of the song to Hayase like as a thank you. And Hayase shakes her head no, like, oh no, it's my pleasure to do it kind of thing. That, no conversation. Zero conversation. But you understand the entire conversation going on. You can understand the scene. You understand everything. This is where Zettai, I think, is where... This is why when I did my ranking of 2 Do You Remember Love or Zettai, because I promised I would do that video, I put Zettai at the bottom. It was because I thought there was too much exposition and not enough let's feel it. We don't get that, like, even when in the final scene with Freya before she dies, all of that's Hayate and Freya talking the entire time. There's no, like, break in the conversation until he finally kisses her and then she dies. Like, and it's one of the only scenes in the entire movie that has no background music in it. Like, one of the scenes that I remember that don't have background music are when Max and Exodore and Alad are, eating and they're talking about Cromwell, and then also when Max and Alad are going up the elevator to the bridge, and Max is talking about how I never wanted to be captain of a ship. Just at the time, the New UN Spacey and the New Earth government didn't have enough, veterans there, so he had no choice. And that he still thinks of himself as a pilot. That's like very few scenes in the movie that have zero music in it. And it just... They needed more breaks in there. There's just too much music, like, going on through the entire movie. Which is something that Do You Remember Love? Macross Plus doesn't have this issue. Also, they have more background music too, like just general background music. Macross 7 is really only a TV series, so we'll forget about that. But like, there's so little of that in Delta, and I thought that was one of the things that really hurt it. Was like, and that's why I think that it couldn't ever be as good as Macross 2 or Do You Remember Love, because it is spelling everything out for you. Like, and that goes with the foreshadowing that Andrew mentioned earlier, was that there's this entire foreshadowing of everything that's going to come, so you know what's coming. And it's like, well, if you watched Do You Remember Love from the beginning and you've never watched it before, you don't know what's coming. Like, you expect Earth to be okay, even based on, the conversation that Ichijo has with Mimei when they're trapped in that little place and they have the shower scene and all that stuff. He's right that Earth didn't get away unscathed, right? But when you actually see Hayase and Ichijo show up and they realize that they're on Earth, like completely wiped out, and humanity's left at near extinction. You know, that's when you don't expect to see that happen, but then you see it happen, and you're just like, holy shit! It wasn't spelled out for everybody, right? So this is where I think that movie kind of is weaker than all the other movies in Macross. And yes, you're right that it's the first movie that is actually a completely new story that doesn't, like basically summarize what happened in the events of whatever previous series or whatever it was, like, because Macross Plus was an OVA that got made into a movie, but I still recommend Delta. I still recommend Delta Zettai Life because it's just such a, an amazing series or amazing movie. We won't talk about the series. Well, we'll move into the series now then. Let's talk about Delta as a general series. So, like, going through the TV series, the first movie, second movie as a whole. What our thoughts of it is. I mentioned in a video, I've bashed Delta constantly, but Jason, what are your thoughts on Delta as a whole?
Delta as a whole, I can't help but separate it.
I understand. I understand completely. Trust me, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the series first. There were some interesting aspects about this series, but there was also some major drawbacks that I make sure I talk about these in the panels that I do at various conventions. While the music is great, the Valkyrie design, the character design, I think is great. The problem with the story in and of itself at its core is that it feels like it's a big, wide open story. I mean, they opened up the world of Macross in this series to not just one or two planets, but there was like 5 or 6. It's like a whole part of
an entire system, an entire star system.
Yeah, and not only and to do that, you need a long series. When you're talking about a Macross series and you're talking about the intricacies and all the lore that is in Macross, and you're going to open it up to that big of a plane to tell a story, you're almost asking for problems. You're almost asking for things not to be resolved, or for questions that are never going to get answered to come up. And it was like they widened the world up so wide in Delta to start off with, and then all of a sudden they just shrank it into like this little thing, and you just get little tiny bits and pieces of the rest of the world here and there. And that was my biggest issue with the series in general, is that it widens it up, and then you all of a sudden it makes it feel like you're claustrophobic, because now it's just telling a story about this PMC and Windermere, and that's pretty much it. And it's almost like you want to know more. You want to know what's going on with the other planets. You want to know what's going on with I can't remember the name of the planet with like the cat people.
That one, yeah.
But you only get like 2 episodes with that, and then the one pilot has like, I think, cameo at the end. And you're kind of like, what the fuck? I want to know more about this culture too. And they don't do it.
It's because they only had 26 episodes. And I have a similar complaint to that, though, is that, the sheer number of characters was way too much for the limited amount of episodes. And it goes directly to what you're saying about it was too short to contain all of that shit in there, right?
Yeah, and what they should have done, and this obviously, my opinion, doesn't count for shit, but I think you're able to capture characters, you're able to keep them more concise, and you're able to get people vested quicker if you limit the number of characters, but you also limit the world that you're creating a little bit. Now, I mean, some people can argue against that and say that, well, yeah, but Macross it deals with space and it's sci-fi. It should be big, and I agree with that to a point. But you make Delta 2 seasons if you're going to do that. Make it three. Make it 52 episodes.
Well,
Now,
nowadays that won't happen in Japanese animation.
I'm not saying they should have. I'm just saying that if you're going to make something that big, you should have enough story to fill all of it and to make the people that are getting invested in this story and feel like it's going to be a big story. You need to match that. That's my thought on the TV series. Now, as far as the first movie, I feel like the first movie was just kind of like, we need to kind of fix some of the stuff that we didn't do well in the TV series. I think my biggest issue with the first movie was that they kind of got rid of any sort of love story, with the exception of Hayate and Freya. They pretty much made it more about the teamwork, and instead of these individual love interests and this and that. There's a little bit of God, why can't I think of their names? Reina and what's the other one's name?
Machina?
Yeah. I mean, they show a little bit of that, kind of a playful way. But I mean, for the most part, they took one of the biggest elements out of Macross, which is kind of like that love story kind of tension. I guess the love tension, I guess, is what I'm trying to say more. And it's almost like they just totally got rid of it. Like there's going to be no issue between Mirage and Freya and Hayate. That's completely gone.
Well, I got stuff to say about that when it's my turn later.
You'll be next. Don't worry. I'm saving myself for last, so don't worry.
But they needed something more in there with that. Like even the tension between Arad and Kaname, they totally got rid of that in the movie, and that was one of the things that people liked talking about. They liked talking about, like, well, who did Kaname like? Did she like Messer? Did she like Arad? And I have my own opinions on that, so I'll probably keep that to myself unless people really want to know. But they totally erased that completely, and that some of that stuff, some of that character development, even if it's small stuff, even if it's just little tiny comments here and there, are what make the story. That's having something to relate to the characters is what makes a story more interesting, and they just totally got rid of that, and that's what I thought the movie suffered from the most. Now, I did like the fact that with the Valkyries, they did have them transform more, which is something you didn't see too much in the TV series.
Yes,
so
yes.
Like that.
They didn't use, like, in the TV series, they just basically used Fighter and Gerwalk, and that was the end of it. And they barely used Batroid at all. And I completely agree with, that they had them transform more. Zettai Aibu actually did that really well, which is something that makes Zettai better than the rest of them. But, well, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was glad that the first movie at least did that, because it was kind of like, well, I don't, if you didn't have the toys, you would have no idea how the fuck these things transform, because they didn't do it enough in the TV series. So that was cool. Overall, I didn't care for how they redid, the whole Windermere issue with, with all of that. The White Knight thing was okay. Overall, I didn't like it because of the character development. I think that was its biggest drawback for the first movie. But overall, it's weird. As much as I feel like I can criticize it, there are some aspects of it that I still liked. I mean, I gotta say, like, the solid parts. The music was solid in those. I wish for the first movie, I wish they would have did the ending song, Dancing in the Moonlight. I wish that would have been in the actual animation instead of just at the very end, because that song to me was the fucking greatest song that they did in the movie. And I would probably even argue maybe in all of the TV series. But
I like Love Thunder Glow, which is only used like once in the TV series as an
Oh
ending
yeah,
song.
I love
so
Fat Thunder.
that song is amazing. And but you know what? Like I'm just going to share this real quick. On I'm the director of Super Dimension Con here in Southern California, which is basically like a Macross convention.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go there one day.
Several years ago, we put together kind of like a makeshift like band, and we actually did a cover of that song. And so yeah, it's good enough where we all were like, yeah, let's do this song. Let's do Love Thunder Glow, and it was great. I love that song.
It's too bad it was only used in one fucking episode as an ending. Because that's like one of the best songs, and like it's Mikumo only, and like with all the songs that Watakyure has, like that was the one that should have been in the TV series somewhere. That like I can't describe how much that was a missed opportunity. The Delta TV series is a missed opportunity, but I'll shut up because I gotta save my opinions for later.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty much done. I mean, there were issues with it, but overall, like, I mean, I collect all the toys. I was invested in the characters. I have all the CDs, so I mean,
I have all the CDs too.
As much as I can shit on some of the things that they did with the series and the first movie,
we got Zettai live out of it, so we can't all be all bad, right?
You know, so but. Yeah, and the payoff in the end, watching the second and final movie, made it all worth it. You know, getting to know those characters and getting to see the ending of it.
An actual ending in Macross. Something Kawamori hasn't written in a very fucking long time. Outside of Zero, even Zero had a really fucking weird ending. Think about Macross. Go back to Macross 7. You don't have a strict ending to that. It just kind of like, Dynamite 7 just has busts out of running off again. And you don't get any answers to fucking anything. Then you have, Macross 0 where, Sada takes Sheen off to, wherever. Which I think is directly related to the Mega Road 1 shit in, Zettai, but we'll leave that alone. I think that's just a theory I have that there is a connection to that I think Kawamori's going to do in the next series, but I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. And then, Macross Frontier, whether it's the TV series or the movies, there's no real ending to it, because you get the 15-minute short that came with Zettai, and that answers no questions. It does nothing for the lore. It does absolutely dog shit.
You know what? I gotta say that is the one thing that I was happy to see it, because I do like Frontier, but at the same time I was pissed off because at the end of the second movie of Frontier, when they do
when Aruto folds off with the Bajira Queen, right?
Yeah, but at the end, when the credits are rolling and they do the shooting star song at the end, there's a part in there where Cheryl comes in and basically it's like that song is after she wakes up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, well, why don't you just show her fucking wake up? Why didn't this 20-minute thing be of her actually waking up, coming back, and Alto coming back? You still ended it, and it's kind of like, okay, well, what the fuck happened?
It's Kawamori because he knows that Frontier, because with the failure that Delta was as a TV series in the first movie, because that pissed a lot of people off and a lot of Macross, even the Japanese fans were like, well, fuck Delta. Even if they liked the music, they were like, well, fuck the series. But until Zettai, where everybody loves it, but. But, this is something Kawamori's been doing for a long time, is just, because he saw that Frontier made him a lot of money. Frontier is the reason why we had a fucking Macross card game in Japan. Was because Frontier did so fucking well, and Bandai is directly tied to the hip to Macross with all the toys and shit like that, right? Because that goes back to the original Macross. That's not only, modern Macross. That goes back to OG TV series. Bandai's always been involved. But they went as far as to include it into the Sunrise Crusade card game, which has been gone for quite a while now.
Right.
Which I was playing Gundam War at the time. The minute they made Macross Crusade, I switched over to Crusade series. I was like, Macross card game? Yes, gimme. And then the final real tournament they had, like, for Crusade series, which deck was the most powerful? The Delta decks that had like a bazillion singers in the deck, and Freya was so powerful that it became a 1 per deck card. Like, and I created that deck, and I would play it against my friend, and my friend couldn't fight back against it. It was just too fucking strong. It was just like, you bring Freya out, you dig through your deck, and you draw another, and it's every time I think it was every time that, she enters the battlefield, you can search your deck for another one, and then you can put that singer in the same group with her when she goes out to fight. And they all have the link ability, which allows them to, like, go with well, it's not the link ability. They have a special thing where they're not actually put into the unit to actually be flying it, but they're kind of like with it. And so all of the, like, stat jumps due to characters pumping the stats of a unit and stuff like that all get, bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, it just turns into a fucking, like, one-way a one-way battle that nobody can really fight against, because you can't actually, do anything about it. Especially if you have 3 Freyas in your deck, you just, another one, here you go. It was just, it was so broken. I still have that deck around here somewhere. That deck is broken as fuck, but yeah, they did all that because of Frontier. And Kawamori knows this, and he knows that there's still a ton of Frontier fans, and he's trying to milk it for as much as he can. Like, a lot of people believe the next Macross thing that's going to get made is something Frontier related. Everybody thinks that. And it's like, this should have been done, like, they should have done the short. They should have done, the Delta movie on its own, and, a Frontier movie on its own. Make everybody happy, right? But nope, can't do that. Gotta make this short little thing. And, I mean, even the Macross 7 movie edition is, it was a 30-minute, like, full episode that came right before, that was shown just before the Macross Plus movie edition in theaters. Right. So, yeah. At least, even Macross 7 got 30 fucking minutes to tell a story about Emilia, which is she is the 5th daughter of Maximilian. I remember this. So first is Comedia, who you see in the original TV series. Then there's Miracle, who's the only one who has blue hair, that looks like Papa. Then there's the twins, Therese and Muse. And Therese shows up in Macross VFX 2. Then you have Emilia, who is in the Macross 7 movie. You have Miranda, who doesn't show up on screen but is the mother of Mirage. And you have Mylene. And then you have, of course, Moaramia, who is the adopted daughter who is from Macross M3. And yes, she's canon. Because it doesn't actually, like, her existence does not bother anything else within the Macross universe. So, but anyway, Andrew, your turn. Let's talk about Delta.
Okay, because I got several Delta ideas, to mention.
Go.
Well, I wanted to mention too, just real quick, way back when you were talking about Zetta's foreshadowing, I just wanted to say that it does work, because the first time you watch it, you don't really think much of the apples, in the galaxy spiral. But it's one of those things where, on the second viewing and beyond, you're like, aha, that's what it's foreshadowing. But anyways, with Delta, I mean, I did enjoy Delta a bit when it first came out, um, and it did have a lot of great character moments, and I do like some of the things that the series did. Like, what I really loved was how they scaled back the like Frontier and Seven had the UN fleet against literal gods, and it was just refreshing that they kind of scaled it back against humanoid enemies for a chance. But at the same
Which
time,
is only
what
the
bothered
second
me
time in
was
any Macross series, by the way, because only Zero, which because that's part of the unification war, is humans against humans on Earth. But beyond that, there's
well,
never been
well, that's
a
why I say humanoids.
yeah,
Because they're humanoid aliens.
right.
But that leads into what I was going to say is what bothers me though is that on one hand the Wintermarians are sold as being like stronger and faster than humans, and yet somehow Delta is able to survive dogfights with them time after time. Like, I mean, it was kind of hard to buy that argument. Like, if they're really if the Wintermarians are faster and stronger, like then they should have the reflexes to easily beat shoot down Delta time after time. But granted, they do go into that whole like extrasensory perception thing with Freya songs influencing Hayate at times. And come to think of it, like I feel like the series should have delved more into it, like because it was one of those things that makes sense if you've seen Frontier, but if you've just started with Delta, then you're just kind of like, oh, this is like a Dragon Ball Z trope or something. I mean, that's kind of how it felt to me. Um, um, and one of the other problems, I mean, I think it kind of leads into the fact that Delta is kind of all spread out over the galaxy. Is like they're kind of jumping from planet to planet, and there's no real sense of like progression. Like with Frontier, there's a feeling of progression because they're in a big colony ship headed towards the center of the galaxy, and then later, towards the end, their goal is to go towards the Vajra planet. So there's this kind of feeling of progression. And what I felt was missing too was that Roy just didn't feel like really good villain material.
Oh, he
Especially
wasn't. He wasn't.
since he looks like Grace and all that, and with the glasses and all that, and then he does a similar Fold Network stuff, and which I kind of think that the Fold Network thing. I mean, I kind of appreciate how it was creepy in a way, the idea that everyone's mind is going to be joined, and then you're not going to die immediately, but all these pilots are just kind of they're just kind of in a trance, and their jet is just going to keep on going and going until it crashes into something. Like, I just found that like kind of creepy in a cool way. But what bothered me was just that, like with Grace, we see her be an actual antagonist. Like she hides the tainted blood of Cheryl to hide the fact that she's got this lethal infection that's going to kill her, and she uses the Dimensional Eater to like destroy that Centrati fleet and to try to kill Cheryl. And like she even when Cheryl's in the hospital recovering, like Grace literally gets in her face and says like, "Oh, I want to kill you," and blah blah blah. And it was just kind of great to kind of build up the villain to it, because I feel like it's great when you have an antagonist who like does something to really get under the skin of the protagonist and to give a reason for the audience to hate him and all that. And so like with Frontier, I was like so hyped up for the final battle that okay, they're gonna give Grace what she deserves. And with Delta though, it's like what did Roy really do to the protagonist? Like he didn't do much aside from tie Mikumo up in rope. But before that too, like there was times where Keith wanted to kill Valkyrie and Roy would step in. So I mean, he didn't feel like a really good fleshed out antagonist. Whereas like Ian Cromwell,
At least
when
he has that.
yeah, like what I loved that Zettai did was when Freya starts telling her family story, and then moments after that, we see all the apple trees get like burnt up, and and so like what I attached the trees as like her family because like that's literally
Windermerians
how
don't
she
live
remembers
very
her
long,
family and all that, and
yeah.
And so when she later gets that seed and wants to plant it, it's like that's her restoring her family, her family lineage, And so it didn't feel like a MacGuffin. It felt like a character almost, that you felt emotionally attached to. But the Delta TV series didn't really have that emotional connection with, the antagonist Royd and all that. So. Trying to think what other gripes I had with Delta.
It's the Bash Delta hour.
Well, I mean, I kind of love the TV show. Like, I mean, there were a lot of good, heartwarming character moments that that sat with me. But you just like, there's other parts of it too where like Frontier just felt like it was a better written show overall. I don't know. It's So I don't know. I think part of it too is just the fact that Frontier was so good, and when Delta came out, like part of me was almost expecting it to kind of recycle Frontier ideas. I don't know, but
well, it kind of did with the Valkyrie designs.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It just you kind of want to. When Delta came out, like what 5-6 years after the end of Frontier, you can't help but feel nostalgic for the previous Macross. Oh yeah, the love triangle. I mean, it's funny. The first time I watched Delta, I didn't notice the love triangle between Kaname and Arid, and Miser. Like it just totally went past me. But the second viewing, I saw it and I was like, okay, this feels like the real love triangle, and like they're trying to do something, I guess, more nuanced with like the older characters having the love triangle, which I kind of appreciate that on one hand. But yeah, the first time I saw Delta, I was kind of expecting more of a love triangle dynamic between Freya and Mirage, and I was kind of disappointed that they didn't, but then, I mean, I do appreciate how in Zettai, at least, Mirage is like, I'm rooting for you too. And, like, I get the feeling that Calamari was like, there's no way I'm going to top the previous love triangles that I did, so I'm just going to, take a different direction with it.
Well, no, that was a collective decision. I recall, I think it was the same guy, Nemoto, who brought it up in the, in that, thing at the movie theater in Shibuya, I think it was when they did it. When I was watching the bonus disc from the DVD set, and I recall him saying that they like they wanted to focus on Frey and Hayate, but having the love triangle with Mirage would have gotten in the way of that. So they just said, well, let's throw it out. And especially because the way the first movie ended with, it doesn't seem like a love triangle at all when you watch the movie. Like, if you watch the TV series, you can kind of get an idea that there's kind of something going on. Like, you can tell Mirage is just being really shy. But in the first movie, you don't see that. And so, like, it was easy for them to be able to say, okay, well, let's just throw the love triangle out, and let's just, go with Freya and Hayate and see where it goes. But see, I'll go into that later, because that'll be involving Macross II, because it's canon.
But the one thing I gotta say one thing I really loved with the TV Delta over the movie continuity was I loved the how they had the build up of the mystery about who dropped the bomb, the Dimensional Eater bomb on Windermere, and how you find out it was Hayate's father,
which got retconned by Zettai Live, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand why they got rid of that for the movie continuity, partly because of time. I mean, it worked in the TV series because you had so many episodes to plant little seeds and to plant little clues, and build it up gradually. And plus, too, I like the drama of how, like, I was kind of expecting Freya to have more of a reaction to it because, like, here is, you know, the guy that she loves, and yet his father like bombed this, you know, whole town out of existence, and she saw the traumatic event, you know, as a kid, you know. But instead they kind of like glossed it over, where she sees the picture of Hayate's dad, and goes, aha, this is the guy. She's like, oh my god, this is the guy that gave me the MP3 player that made me fall in love with music, you know. And you know, and it was kind of a heartwarming moment, but at the same time, like I was hoping that there would be more drama where like Freya would be conflicted about her feelings with Hayate because of like the sins of his father, you know. So
I think by the
but
time
maybe
they
that
got
was
into
more-
that part of the story, it was already Freya was already into Hayate, and I think you could excuse that away based on the timing of which it came out. In the
Yeah.
story within the TV series.
Yeah, I guess so, but still, it feels like a missed dramatic opportunity to me, at
Well,
least. I
we
mean-
all know Delta's nothing but missed opportunities. The Delta TV series is nothing but missed opportunities. I think all three of us can agree on that. Delta, the TV series, could have been so much more, and they just didn't call him when he fucked it up.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I read somewhere on Reddit that originally Delta was supposed to be only like 12 episodes long, and then it got extended, and they were like, they didn't know what to do, and so they just found ways to add filler to it or something. That's one theory. I don't know if it's true or
Well,
not.
if that's the truth, then it wouldn't be far from what the original Macross was, because you got 2 filler episodes out of that because they didn't have time to get the animation done.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean,
it's not only it wouldn't have only been Delta that had filler in it. Oh, hey, look,
Yeah.
Macross 7 has tons of filler.
but I mean, I can excuse the filler in STF1 because one, like a lot of the people working on it, that was like their first rodeo, so they were, you know, just cutting their teeth with it.
Yep.
And also, like the Phantasm episode where Hikaru is dreaming, like I liked it did feel like it added character to him. And
Well, yeah, then there
and
is
it felt like
foreshadowing in
if
that
you-
one
if you're
too.
when you're forced to do a filler episode, I feel like that's the way to do it, is to make the most of, you know, to squeeze lemons into lemonade, and that's what they did.
And that's not
with
what
the filler
Global Report
episode.
is. Global Report is so garbage. God, I fucking hate that episode. That's why I put on my community tab, I asked people, should I skip over them or should I watch them? And the one guy who I know watches all my videos and stuff is really keen on what I have to say about Macross. He says skip them. I'm like, yeah.
Personally, I skip Global's report, but I watch the Phantasm episode because I just like the dream sequences and all that, and the you know that Hikaru is having. So
Well,
Yeah,
I'll go quick.
That was their second filler episode, wasn't it?
Phantasm
Yeah,
was
it
the
was
second
the-
one.
it was their second filler episode. And it was when Hikaru gets injured.
Right.
He gets
And
shot
But
down.
I think they did it because like they needed another filler because the
Yeah.
production was so fast that they couldn't keep up.
Yeah,
So they-
Calamari.
But
Yeah,
they
he-
couldn't do the same thing over again. So
Yeah, he said the animators were like, we need more time to, you know, do all these fancy sequences and all that. I mean, you know, I get it because I mean it's hard to crank out a full, you know, anime episode every week and all that, especially if you're going to have, you know, complicated scenes and all that. So,
Yeah, that well, of course, back then when you had to draw everything by hand, that also added to it, which is why, you know, people don't like the original TV series because how poorly drawn Miri is. As cool as Miri is as a character, some of those episodes with her in them, just her face looks so fucked up. It's all
let me tell you a story. I think it was, I can't remember the year. I think it might have been 2012 or something, but many years ago, I actually got to see Noboru Ishiguro at Anime Week in Atlanta, and he said that one of the reasons why a lot of those episodes were terrible was because they were shipped out to this South Korean, you know, anime studio that's mostly used to doing in between work,
Yeah, and they were forced to do like full fucking episodes and.
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. I've heard that too. I already knew about that. And they were such on a rush schedule, and this was a group that wasn't used to this stuff, and so it was all just one big mess. Like the original airing of the first TV series, like the scene where all of them get captured. When Max is like takes his Valkyrie and dresses it up as a Zentradi soldier. So fucking weird. But no, there was that scene where
Braid Tie fight. They had to do like all keyframes for part of it because they were to finish the episode in time.
Yep. And then that got aired as it was, and people were pissed off about it. So when they did a re-airing, they managed to finish off those scenes and then re-air it. But people are already like. And here's the thing: is that the original airing, you'll be surprised to hear, the most popular, like the place that had the most, the highest viewer rating was in Yamagata Prefecture of all places, way up north. I think it had like a 30 or 40% viewer rating or some shit because of the time slot it had. Because the OG Macross had a really shit time slot in most other places. Kind of like what happened to poor Gundam X. Gundam X, had a decent time slot at first, and they put it to Sunday morning at like 5:30 in the fucking morning. And of course they're gonna, cancel it in the middle of fucking season, because nobody's gonna get up at 5:30 in the morning to watch fucking Gundam. So yeah, that's kind of but when they did a second airing, that's when it got really popular, and that's when they decided to do the movie Do You Remember Love? Because they wanted to fix the shit that came out of, having to have such a rush schedule for the TV series. They wanted to do something proper. And that's why Do You Remember Love was so popular. It's because it looked good, it sounded good, it was well drawn, there weren't the horrible, animation from what happened in the TV series due to, the compacted schedule and shit. And the fact that, I'm pretty sure you guys know this, that the original Macross TV series was originally planned for, I think, 36 episodes, and then it got cut to 24. So when the story was supposed to end at Iowa Nagareru at the end of the war, but then during the middle of the series, they said, okay, well, we'll give you the extra few episodes, and so they got up to 39, and they had nothing planned after that. So all of the stuff that happens in the post-war was stuff they had to rush to write, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, I thought that Macross, the OG Macross, was originally planned for 24 episodes, and then the merchandise was selling so well they decided to extend it. That was what I heard.
Well, no, it was originally supposed to be 30-something episodes, and then they cut it back, and then it got put back again to the 39, and that's what caused, all the... That's why the second half, like all the stuff in the post-war stuff, is so garbage. Because...
I mean, personally, I love the post-war stuff.
Oh, I do too. And they later, through not retconning, but, like adding detail to the story, the black pilot that is in Skull Squadron with Ichijo is Miller Johnson from Macross Plus.
Ah.
And so he was flying with Ichijo during the post-war era, and then, because, in Macross Plus, he's lost his leg, right? So during the post-war era is when he loses his leg, but he was originally flying with Ichijo, which is something that was later added into the canon to kind of connect Plus to the original TV series.
Where is that added in?
I don't remember. I just know I read it. I heard it on a Japanese lore channel. I don't like, and that motherfucker doesn't put any of his sources, and doesn't state any of his sources, which fucking pisses me off because I want to know where he gets this information from. Like,
yeah, because I don't know if that's true or not. I've never heard that before, and I get a lot of information. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. It's like, because, you just think it's just some rando that they threw into the TV series to be with Ichijo, and it's like...
Could they have done that? Because I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly when Macross Plus was originally conceived, Calamari wanted it to be an original, like totally independent anime, and apparently the studio said, "Well, what you're asking for is a lot of money. We would like you to incorporate it into the Macross franchise that's successful, or lower the budget." And so Calamari decided to
Stick it in
bring
Macross.
uh, make Macross Plus like into the continuity. So maybe that was some way of to try to
Connect everything.
Get some dots to connect. And
Well, you gotta remember is that Kawamori was a busy motherfucker at that time, because you have to remember that they started releasing Macross Plus before they started airing 7 on TV, but the last couple episodes of Plus were aired or were released on video or whatever, Laserdisc, while 7 was airing on TV.
Yeah, I heard about that. So it kind of spoiled the surprise, because a lot of people who saw Macross 7 knew that, they saw that Basra had the YF-19, so they kind of knew that, the YF-19 is going to win the competition.
Well, see, that's why they added the VF-22s with Max and Miria, was so that they could say that, oh no, it wasn't only the 19 that they managed to get produced. Also, the 21 had new versions made, which that'll go into my little talk about the Delta side of things. But I agree. I thought it was interesting how they had Hayate's father be the guy who ends up dropping, causing the what was it, what was the name of that shit? God damn it. Let me check. Which book was it?
It was some little town, and I don't remember the name.
Carlisle.
But I remember Blake said that his sister was married to the mayor of that town or something, or.
Yeah, it was Carlisle. I can't remember the name of the incident though. Let me check. It's the Black Storm of Carlisle. I was trying to remember the name of the incident. Now, the incident is still part of the canon. It's just that Hayate's father has been removed from that. Which I mentioned in my chronology video because of the direct. I just looked at the magazine from last year, and it says it right there. The Black Storm of Carlisle it was dropped over the city of Carlisle, or the town of Carlisle, and what I was happy to see. Now, this is something I'll praise the Delta TV series, because I bash it all the time, but I'll praise it. There are two things about the Delta TV series that I absolutely love. And one is a horticulture lore, and it's all done through Belger Stone and what information he provides. Now, we have to remember that the last scene of Belger Stone, where he's talking about the location of Lady M, he specifically states a location in, I think it's episode 24, 25. He mentions this. It's the exact location where Mega Road 1 is found in Zettai. This is a direct connection to the TV series and what Belger Stone has to say.
He said it was the location where the Mega Road went and disappeared.
Missing. Exactly. So, yeah, exactly. So it was a direct connection to Zettai and what happens there, and them trying to get rid of Mega Road 1. And the thing is that the thing I loved about that in Zettai was that you can tell Max is surprised, because Max was there when Mega Road 1 disappeared. He remembers Hayase. He knows all these people. And when they disappeared, he knew when they heard about... He remembers when he heard about when they disappeared and they lost contact. And then he sees it physically there in front of his face. And he's just like, holy shit, it was true. And you can see that in Max's face. And I think this is why Max was so important to be in Zettai. But, going back to the TV series. The horticulture lore. Belger Stone was so crucial to the second half of the Delta TV series. As much as I can shit on the first half of the Delta TV series, because the first half of the TV series is just fucking garbage. The second half, when they get into the horticulture lore, they get into the details of all this stuff. Get into the details of Mikumo, what she is, who she is, all this stuff. that is the best part of Delta TV series. Like, you have to watch the first half because you have to understand what the characters are up to. But just, it just, you know, the first half is so fucking tedious. It feels like the middle part of Macross 7. You just don't want to fucking watch it. It's just so much garbage. But then you get to the second half. You get Belgerstone, you get protoculture lore, you get deep protoculture lore. And his theory that songs are weapons. And, you know, I can't remember, I heard somewhere, I'm pretty sure it was Japanese lore channel or something I heard this from. But when you, or it might have been in one of the books, I can't remember off the top of my head anymore. But the, when you look at the way the protoculture was developing, when they had the song I'll with the Muscat in the protoculture era, it was during a very peaceful time for the protoculture. This is why they were able to write a love song. Because if you think about most of the rest of the protoculture, you know, history, it's all involved with, you know, them breaking into two groups, and they're fighting each other, and then they're like, okay, well, let's just create the Zentradi and have them fight for us. Then the Zentradi start fighting, and then, you know, all this other shit's going on, and then, like, they, you know, create the Windemirians after meeting the Bajara Queen. Of course, they create the Bird Human after meeting the Bajara Queen, too, because it's, they look at the Bajara Queen, they're enamored by it, they're interested in it, so they create the Bird Human to be their, you know, made up version constructed for the Bird Human. So you have all this stuff going on. You have them trying to create fold quartzes from the runes on Windermere when they're genetically splicing shit there. You know, it's, and because I haven't finished Macross 30 yet, I don't know the details about the you know, protoculture ruins and stuff that they left on Ouroboros yet, but we'll get there, and I'm going to make a video about that, don't worry. I'm doing that separately because I'm not going to put it all together. It was just too much work. But the Delta CV series does have some important points that really reflect on, you know, connections to Zero, the connections to, and they actually, in the newer book, the newer source book, they do show a lot of those like, those, what is it, the historical events that Delta refers to are spelled out more in detail in the newer book. Like I mentioned in my video on the chronology, is that the book, the little magazine thing that was released last year after Zettai came out, was still in a couple movie theaters. That one has a lot of the deeper lore that goes into protoculture lore and, you know, the, like, OG Macross, Zero, the Unification War era, and a lot of stuff with 7. Whereas the newer book really goes into, like, all the Delta focused lore. Because, and because there's some inconsistencies between both, I mentioned them in the video, because there's a couple of them that mention how when the Zentradi started getting produced is like 100-year difference between the books, so that there's some, you know, things that are kind of a little off. But Delta added so much to protoculture lore, and like, you can forget about all the other stuff in it. Like, the protoculture lore in itself is the most important reason to watch the TV series for Delta. Like, fuck the characters, fuck, you know, everything else. The protoculture lore is the meat of what Delta is. And, you know, I thought that, you know, that the little nod to, like, when in Zettai, when Mikumo's looking at the ruins in Ravenglass, you know, you can tell she realizes something about that, but they never actually say it. And this is something Kawamori's been doing lately, is his excuse is, well, you never learn. He said this in an interview, I think it was in New Type magazine last year, where he said that you never actually learn all the answers to your questions until much later in the future. And sometimes you never actually learn the actual answer. So, you know, that's like, if you think about like real life history, who writes the history? The victors. So we don't know like all of the history about certain historical events. I'm not going to say specific events, but you know, this is a historical fact that the winners write the history. The history is skewed toward their viewpoint of what happened in the aftermath. So there's a lot of things that are hidden from us. Now, there are certain events in history where we can look at them and we can actually find that there's, you know, we can find the other side and we can actually look into it, but it's very hard to find the other side because it's being, you know, suppressed for various reasons. But Kawamori's taking the same position, which is why in the official chronology based on these two books, there's inconsistencies, there's, you know, like the TV series, some TV series events take precedent over movie events. Like, do you remember Love Events not being like the main thing versus TV series events? Or like the post-war events from the TV series are actually considered more canon because, you know, they don't involve Do You Remember Love? And then they connect into Flashback 2012 and Mega Road 1 leaving. Which they talk about in TV series. Global says, we can't just stay on Earth. We need to have people go out there. He wants Hayase to be the commander of a ship that's going to be a colony ship to go outside Earth, right? So, you know, all this stuff gets all connected. But there's never, like, strict answers to every little thing. Like, for example, Zettai. When you see Mega Road 1, why is one part of it damaged already?
Probably because they killed off Hikaru off screen. That's a popular theory.
Well, I'm pretty sure they killed him off. But no, like, what caused that damage? Now, I've looked into some Japanese lore things that hypothesize that if possibly the reason why Mega Road 1 is not leaving Fold Space is because of it actually bumped into the bird human, and the bird human first tried to attack it, but then they realized that they were on peace, and then, you know, Mega Road 1 being there is preventing the bird human from coming back into normal space. That's just a hypothesis. That's not the actual story, but that's something I've heard. Yeah. But we don't know. See, we don't know whether, like, Mega Road 1 is actually going to, you know, come out of Fold Space, or why it was damaged in Fold Space, or where it got that damage from, because that's a big chunk of that right arm where the Mega Road 1's right side is. That's a huge chunk of damage there. So,
well, can I share my personal theory?
Go for it.
I think that Kawamori is going to try to do is going to kind of try to make it like Interstellar. Did you ever see that movie?
Nope.
Okay. So I remember in like the art books from like, what was it, like 20 years ago or something, they talked about how the Mega Road went missing near a black hole, and how like singing could be heard from the black hole. Like it was implied that the Mega Road, you know, got sucked into the black hole.
I've heard that. I remember hearing that years and years ago.
Yeah. Well, in Interstellar, they had an interesting idea. I don't know, like, they probably got it from an older sci-fi novel or something, but in Interstellar, Earth is dying, and humanity has built these ships, but the problem is they, like, the only thing that's missing is they need to figure out how to finish this formula for anti-gravity to, to finish making these anti-gravity engines so these colony ships can get off the Earth and whatnot. And long story short, like this, meanwhile they send Dennis Quaid, I think that was the actor, like they send this guy, this small crew out to explore these 3 viable planets. And along the way, things go south, and this male astronaut ends up sacrificing himself so that the female astronaut can survive. And escape the escape velocity of this black hole.
Mm-hmm.
But it ends up being fortunate because while he and this android companion get sucked into the black hole, they instead of dying, they end up in this like fourth dimensional tetrahedron or something, and there's and he can see moments in the past, and he's able to communicate to his daughter some way about the formula, and she's able to use that formula to for the gravity stuff. But someone had to be like in the black hole to like the android had to be in the black hole to get the knowledge for the anti-gravity equation and to pass it on and all that. And later it's implied that the ancestors from humanity basically became like gods and created the tetrahedron and basically set up the whole chain of events where humanity was able to pull itself up by the bootstraps with the gravity equation. And so, like, I'm just kind of looking at it, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe Calamari is trying to do something similar, where inside the black hole, the Lady M is able to learn this stuff about the protoculture and how the full technology works and spread it to the outside. And,
Well, yeah, because we don't actually have any answers. Like, all we know is that Megaron 1 lost contact in 2016, which in previous media has always said 2014, so this was officially stated in Zettai, so we know it's 2016 that it disappeared. Then it's been there for this whole time, and then Lady M has been trying to hold back technology. Well, how could she hold back technology like, the Ghost X9 or the Sharon Apple incident or any of these other things when she didn't actually make contact until 2016? So
she's not, from what I gathered, she was saying that, like, and Ian Cromwell says this, is he says that Lady M is banning the further research into these branches like cloning and AI and stuff like that, and he had issue with that. And I wonder how long Calamari had the idea for Lady M, because
probably didn't have it for very long. But because they did have Lady M in throughout all of the TV series, but we never actually learned who she is.
Yeah.
But now we know who she is.
It seems like a happy accident to have Lady M in this whole dynamic, because I mean it in a way, it seems almost to be a religious symbolism where you've got Lady M, where like Ian Cromwell, his goal is to kill Lady M and take over nuns, the new UN Spacey.
Well, no, he just wants to have the release of the end of banning of various technology. Now, this is now here's something that most people don't notice this because people aren't paying attention. I noticed this in the first, I think it was in the first showing, the first time I saw Zettai, I noticed this. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time or second time I saw it that I noticed this. And, of course, this is in the movie theater where the screen is much bigger and all the other shit, right? So it's easier to notice this shit. But nobody else noticed this. Cromwell is supposed to be 56 years old. It says when Exodor brings up his little, like, stat sheet of who he is and stuff in that particular scene.
The thing, too, is they say he's like a quarter Zentradi.
Exactly. How could he be quarter Zentradi if he's 56 years old and he was born at the end of the war? Or, shortly after...
Probably a typo or just factual oversight, But what I wanted to get at was just humor me for the religious, metaphor. In a way, it seemed to me the idea of wanting to kill Lady M and take over nuns, that seems kind of like a rehash of the tale of how after Jesus was killed, the Romans, I think it was the Romans and other people were looking for Lady Magdalene, and because she supposedly had knowledge about the truth of Christianity, or how the church should go and stuff like that. And so to me, I think that it was kind of clever that he had Lady M be Lady M, because you can, and the whole thing with nuns, because on one hand it is a fitting metaphor for this is the new UN Spacey, but you can also look at it like, I just can't help but imagine like nuns as in like the religious, women that dress up, the Catholic nuns and whatnot.
Well, see, here's
So,
the problem with that idea of nuns, is that the New UN Spacey was founded in Macross II. And this is something, when I say Macross II is canon, this is what... So, this is very important, because when they were doing the production of Macross II, they weren't allowed to use any characters or anything from the original Macross. They couldn't, they originally wanted to make Sylvie a granddaughter to Maximiria, which is in the novels, by the way. I have all 5 books of the novels. I haven't read book 4
But
yet.
she was the archetype for Mirage,
Right, and originally, right, she was quarters in Trotty. Well, they wanted, Tomita wanted to write her as the granddaughter of Maximiria, but he couldn't, so that's why her name is Sylvie Gina, and not Genus. If they, that was the whole reason why they left that there, is that they named her Gina, because Tomita really, really wanted to make her the, granddaughter of Maximiria. Well, now that we know Maximiria's 7 daughters, the only one who could actually be old enough to have given birth to her to be her mother would have been Mylene. Maybe Miranda, but Miranda now has Mirage. Emilia is going to be too old. She'll be in her 50s by that point. The only one who's young enough is Mylene. So she'd have to be the daughter of Mylene at this point, because the way things have balanced out. Unless, somehow after Macross 7, Maximiria are, finally happy again for a short period of time and they have another baby. Which seems to happen with them, is anytime they make up, they bone each other, or Max bones Miria, and then they have another baby. So, who knows? Because we don't know how, if Zentradi have menopause or not. So, because they've never stated this stuff. So, we don't know if Miria could actually still have children or not. So...
Well, anyways, like I said earlier, I see the Lady M and the nuns thing as a happy accident. I don't think the Kawamari had that planned out for decades. I think it just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, it did, because, he was, for him, you have to remember, Kawamori has been kind of like Tomino in a lot of ways. And I say this in a bad way. Because Tomino, you can tell which series he does, whether it's, Dumbine or the first Gundam or, Zabungo or, some of these other things like G-Reco. Or Turna Gundam, when he's serious about making a Gundam series or any kind of series, you can tell he's invested in it. You can tell when he's not invested in it. Zeta Gundam he wasn't invested in. He didn't want to do Gundam again. He wanted to do a continuation of Dumbine, and Sunrise said no. When Sunrise wanted to make another Gundam series, and after F91, he's like, well, fuck you guys. And he got tired of them, so he made USO 13 just to fucking piss them off. He killed off every cute girl in Shrike Team, outside of, Connie and maybe one other. I mean, and he did that specifically on purpose. He did it, specifically to piss off Sunrise, because he was pissed. And he even sold the rights to Gundam for 1,000 yen to Sunrise, because he was tired of Gundam. That's a famous story. He's admitted to that. He said, take the rights to Gundam, I want nothing to do with this shit anymore. And even Bandai buys Sunrise in 93? 94? Bandai buys up Sunrise, so they get all the properties that Sunrise owned for all these decades. He then comes back, after they've done G Gundam, Gundam 8, and Gundam X. For the 20th anniversary, he does Turner Gundam. And he gets Sid Mead to do the designs for a lot of the mobile suits. The mobile dolls, basically. Because that's what they call them in Turner Gundam. And he... actually, he wanted to make Roland a female. Bandai said, no, make him a boy. So what did Tomino do? to shit on them, he made Roland as feminine as possible, and he gave him a female voice actress, and he had him cross-dress in the fucking show. And the Char character, Harry Ord, fell in love with Rola, and, and then later he finds out, it was Roland, and it was a boy, and Harry is like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? He did all of this specifically to fuck with Bandai and Sunrise. Kawamori is very similar. You can tell when he's serious about doing a series, he's very, very invested. You can tell. Do you remember Love? He's very invested in it. You can tell in, Macross Plus, Macross 7, he's invested in it. Macross 0. As much as people don't pay attention to 0, Kawamori is very serious in 0. Frontier, he hadn't done Macross in forever. Like, if you think about what did Kawamori do between 0 and Frontier, he did the Mega Designs in Kistom, which is a very forgotten series, which I own the Blu-ray set for because, 2mix. Because I'm a massive 2mix fan, and fuck Gundam Wing, give me 2mix. That's all I'll say about that. But he does the Mega Designs in there. He does Aquarian, which is his own baby, and he takes the technology and things that he learned from the CG in Aquarian, and also stuff he learned from 0, and he applied that to Frontier. And it was the first series that he directed and wrote for Macross, I think, since the original TV series, I want to say. Like, he was... Because he didn't write any of the episodes of Macross 7. He delegated that to other people, one of them being Tomita. But you can tell, when he's focused on doing something serious with Macross, this is why I compared him to Tomino. You can tell when he's serious about doing something and when he's not serious about doing something. Macross Delta, you can tell he's not that invested in it. And that comes out in the TV series and the first movie. He was very invested and very interested in the second Delta movie. So, he's, this is why we got a very good second Delta movie, is because he was actually interested in doing it, and he was focused on it, and he was like, okay, we gotta do this right. Because he wasn't invested in, Macross Delta TV series as the first movie whatsoever. We can tell that by the garbage that came out of it. I just want to say one thing about the Delta movie, and then I want to move on to quick things about how we got on Macross, because this has already been 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, I want to move along with the topics a little bit, because we've been, blathering on about everything. My quick comments about the first Delta movie, because I've talked about Zettai enough, is the editing is horrible. I think the way Messer dies is much better. I think that the whole extended scene, I thought the way that they made him, like, they slowed it down and he dodged at the last very second. And then if you look at Shirokishi's mouth, you can tell it was, they just took a different scene, and you can tell he's smiling. He wouldn't be smiling, he'd be surprised as fuck if Messer dodged that. This just was fucking horrible editing. The only good things about the first Delta movie are the new scenes that were completely originally made for the movie. Anything that they copied and pasted out of the TV series is just flat out garbage. Like when they did the new song Change, they had to do whole new animation for that, or whole new CG for that. So that ended up being good. I don't like the song Change very much, but the way that it was done as a concert scene was good. The scenes where Kaname, Dana, and Rei are captured on the ship, that's really good. I thought that the soldiers just completely missing 3 girls walking up to them was fucking stupid. That total Mary Sue shit.
Yeah, I didn't fall for that scene either.
That was just bullshit. And they make it look... Now, what's even stupider about this is that they get hit. You can see, I think it was Kaname Arena gets hit in the leg. There's no blood. Where's the fucking blood? You know, they had Musser bleed the fuck out on screen, but they can't put a little scratch or a little cut with blood coming out on Kaname or Reina's leg. What the fuck is this shit? Which, this is something that I will complain a little bit about Zettai real quick, is the scene where Hayate jumps in and blocks the missiles. Before that, he shoots the missiles down. Well, where are the fucking missiles on the screen? Like, if you look very carefully, there are no missiles coming. There's just explosions there. Just fucking do this right for a change. All you have to do is copy and paste some shit there. How hard can this shit fucking be? You know, that scene still bothers me to this day. Like, I like Zettai, but that some of these scenes where they're just lazy shit in there and they don't look it over. Like, if they're hand drawing it, I can forgive that. They're using fucking CG. Wait, where are the missiles on screen? Just fuck that shit. But that's all I'll say about that. The next topic I want to talk about is the question about Macross II.
The Macross thing, right?
The Macross, the question about Macross II, because I asked for one. So just because I have to do it can be just one or two questions about Macross II, why it's canon, because, you know, I know Jason understands this, because he's, you know, seen all this shit himself. I've seen this shit myself. But a question from somebody who would question the canonicity of Macross II. Go.
Well, I guess one thing that I've been wondering about is, so, especially because years ago, I remember seeing on Macross World, people claim that it was a separate timeline or something.
Oh, people have been saying that forever.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, do you think that they'll ever, like, do a remake of Macross 2 or something to try
God,
to tie
I
it
fucking
more
hope
into the
not.
canon?
God, I fucking hope not. Because it would take away all of Mikimoto's artwork. And I'm a massive Mikimoto fan. I love his art style. I don't like his newer art style very much. Like the stuff that he did, like in Macross the First, the comic. Like, he did that all in computer, which it was the first time he ever used computer to, you know, do artwork for a comic or anything, or for any reason. And he actually has a little joke comic at the end of the first book that talks about that. It was really funny. Because I have Macross the First. I have 4 of the 6 books, but I only have 1, 2, 3, and 6. I need 4 and 5. But it would take away all of Mikimoto's artwork, for one. I agree that there could be some things that they could, you know, that they should have added. And one of the guys who was behind it, I think it was Takanashi Minoru, in the 2014 interview he did on this, that they posted on this one website. I showed the interview in one of my videos. I think it was in the Macross II canon video. I showed this interview that he did. This is in 2014 to promote the Blu-ray release of the limited edition, which I own, because Macross II. But the Takanashi, he says that maybe there are some things he would like to do to remake Macross II. He would like to do a remake, but, you know, I would be completely against it. Like, because stop with remakes. We don't need fucking remakes. Macross 2 is a classic as it is. And, you know, I agree. Like, I will completely agree. There are some things in Macross 2 that get left undiscussed that maybe there's some question about. Like, within the context of the series. And you can't use the novels to really, you know, fill in the gaps, because the novel setting is very, very different. And this is because I've read the first 3 novels of the Macross 2 novelizations. And novel 3 is a completely original story. Like, completely original. That was never part of the animated version. Which is something Tomita himself wrote the novelization. And he changed the settings to where Hibiki is his personality is much worse. He's a bigger asshole. Sylvie is, Sylvie and Nex's relationship is really weird because Nex is actually he's also related to Max and Miria. And so Nex trying to be with Sylvie means they're like marrying within the family, or like trying to be together within the family. And Nex is like really, really like pushing Sylvie to like bang him. Like,
so it's like Typhoon 2.0.
Yeah, you could. Well, except the difference between Nex and Kaifun is that, like, Kaifun is very directly. Well, they're both directly related, but Nex is like a playboy. He's known to be like, just like. Yeah, like even in the novelization, I think it was in book. I might have been book 1, might have been book 2. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I read them, but they specifically talk about how he's like banging a new chick every night. Amy has a much bigger prominent role than Saudi does, which in the OVA, Saudi is like the one that's a little bit older, who's closer to Sylvie in age. So they're kind of like really close friends, whereas Amy and Nastasia are kind of like on their own thing. And Amy and Nastasia don't get a whole lot of, screen time, where Saudi does get that scene in the episode 2, Ishtar, where they're like watching Hibiki and Ishtar running around Culture Park, or Karutum Plaza's, what is it called? But that a lot of the things are very, very different in the novelization, so you can't take any of that as trying to support anything of the OVA, because that's just so different. Like I did videos in Japanese explaining the differences between the OVA and the novelization of Macross 2, and holy shit, I was taking notes as I was reading the fucking book. It just, holy shit, there is so much fucking different about both of them. Like, the entire third book is an entirely new story, so I didn't even bother with that. But like, even just within the first 2 books, there's like, I think I wrote like 2 or 3 pages worth of differences. It was fucking incredible. But and this is, as I'm reading, I like see this, oh shit, this is different than the OVA. Okay, write that down. And I just type it all in Japanese. It's fucking so, that was almost as much work as fucking translating the chronology. It's serious. Like, it was horrible. And that wasn't even translating anything. That was like typing it out in Japanese. I was reading in Japanese. It was fucking whatever. But I don't, like, I sure as fucking hope not they don't ever remake Macross 2, because Macross 2 is so fucking amazing as it is. But there I will say, because of they, like, even Tomita said he wanted to do 2 more episodes. Like, he wanted to have an 8-episode OVA because he wanted to expand on the relationship between Fef and Ishtar. And he also wanted to have an actual battle between, like, Sylvie and Fef, or Nex and Fef or something. Like, he wanted to have Fef have a more prominent role as a pilot, and also to expand on the relationship with Ishtar and Fef. But that didn't happen. But that's the one thing that he said he's kind of, he kind of regrets. So, he wishes it was just a little bit longer, but, you gotta make do with what you have, right? And Macross 2 is, even with some of the little things that are left unanswered, or some questions in there, or whatever, it's still, to me, the best Macross, because it, and I even went after that one guy in my video, Macross 2 is canon. I went directly at him because he said that with a few retcons it would fit perfectly. I'm like, well, what the fuck are you talking about? And because it was always meant to be all one thing, and Big West has always been very adamant to say that, like, in interviews, and Bandai said specifically, without Macross 2 we don't have Macross today. It is part of the universe. And the one thing that I have to mention here about that is that they use a word in Japanese, kurorekshi, black history. And not, black people history. This is like black, it's literally color black. And this means something that's been decanonized or something like that. Now, where did this phrase come from? It came from Turner Gundam. So this is a new phrase that came out 7 years after Macross II came out. But because of the impact of that word and the meaning it has, it's become the like standard word to say something's been decanonized. Now, they use this word in Japanese to refer to Macross II ever since Turner Gundam came out, because that's where the original phrase came from. And even in Macross Delta Zettai Raibu, Reina says Kaname Kurorekshi when she shows the picture of the Kaname losing her top in that, like on top of that bowl or whatever it is, right? Or it's a space hippo. That's what it was. Uchukaba, yeah, space hippo. Even Reina uses that word in the show or in the movie. So this is
a joke. I mean, I just went by the subtitles because I don't know Japanese, but yeah, I remember in the subtitles, Reina says like, "Oh, embarrassing past," or Kaname's embarrassing past.
Well, it's kind of the past thing, because you notice how Kaname is she's talking about, oh, I was on stage with Nanka before, and so
and Machina uses the opportunity to tease her.
Yep, and then Reina shows the actual picture and is like, hey, fuck you.
Well, they set up that joke in the first movie because I remember when they were having their scene where they were bonding with the ladies' night. Kaname says that, and I think it was in the TV show as well. She said that when she did her solo gig, she was, forced to do all these embarrassing skits on TV shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they set it up, and oh yeah, that was definitely foreshadowing. But they needed to show that just to, it gives more character depth to Kaname. And Kaname doesn't get enough character depth, I think. I think she's the one.
It also set up Reina's character great because it shows her as, like, she's a troll and all that, and she loves to tease people.
Yep.
And so it was great how the start of the movie has Reina as a troll, but when Freya is, like, very weak and about to fall again, the very first person
to grab her hand is Reina.
Is Reina, yeah, and I loved that bit.
See, I think, well, I don't disagree with that decision, although I think it should have been Mikumo. Based on the scene in the capsule where Mikumo's, crying, my favorite scene in the fucking movie, I think that it should have been Mikumo to do it. I honestly think they should have had Mikumo do it. I'm not against Nina doing it. I'm just saying it should have been Mikumo.
Well, I mean, Mikumo did get, she did hold the other hand while Rina and Machina had one side.
Oh, I know. I know. But I'm just saying that based on that scene, it should have been Mikumo. Based on that capsule scene, it should have been Mikumo.
And I mean, I was surprised by just two of the small decisions they had, like, Mikumo didn't join in on the group hug. She just kind of stood outside the group hug. And then
I thought the line Kaname said was fucking stupid. Like, I want to live on too. It's like, and she looks like this little girl, and it's like, Kaname, no, it didn't fit her personality. It didn't fit the scene. Like, it just random, like that whole scene with like them just saying Zettai, Zettai, Zettai this whole time, and all the other shit, and just like, god damn it! This is like
it's one of those irrational movie things where you either have to be in the moment, and I don't know, it doesn't make sense when you think about it rationally, but a lot of movies are like that. But what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say when they're, I noticed too that when Freya is mentioning their names and the camera pans to the Valkyrie singers, they skip over Kaname. Like they, so I was kind of disappointed by that. Like, it would have been nice if they had all four of the other girls in the pan shot, but instead they start with Mikimo and all that, and just kind of skip over Kaname. Like she's there on the side, but still, like they didn't bother to draw her face where where like Freya's like looking directly at her. That was just one little thing that bothered me is that they didn't give Kaname her 2 seconds camera attention there.
I think Kaname is probably one of the most underrated characters in all of Delta.
Yeah.
And like she has so much past. Like she's got like this whole career that was before her. She's the leader. She's also, she also worked. I mean, in the TV series, she works as like, kind of like some sort of data gatherer or something on the bridge as well. Like she just, there's so much to her, and they don't really.
Yeah, I mean,
they just kind of portray her like she's just the leader of Wildcat. That's it.
I mean, Konami feels like she's kind of like the Misa archetyped if she became an idol singer, and I think that might be part of the reason why they just felt like, well, we can gloss over Konami because we've seen Misa before. Like that's kind of how I feel about it. Like they feel like, oh, we can just kind of gloss over Konami and give more screen time to the other girls, I guess.
Well, like, because the first movie, and specifically to the movie, because the TV series does elaborate more on the other characters and stuff, but especially like they talk a little bit, like Kaname has more screen time and stuff like that in the TV series versus the movies. But one thing that why she can't be up on the bridge in Zettai is because that's like Higashion. There's already a whole bunch of people there, and you have Exodor. That basically took away her position of that data gathering within Zettai. Now, in the first movie, I completely agree that the first movie they should have done more with her, but this is the problem that I mentioned earlier about the TV series as well, is that there's just too many fucking characters that they can't explain all of them within a 26 episode series. How are they supposed to compact a 26 episode TV series into 2 fucking hours and not gloss over characters? Like Chuck gets completely glossed over in both movies. Like, how often do you see fucking Chuck in Zettai? Like, how often is he like involved in anything? Nowhere. Like, and
they totally took out his family in the movies as well.
Exactly.
Like in the TV series,
exactly.
They had his family and all that, and
I mean, this is where having both a TV series and a movie to cover everything is kind of a good thing, because the TV series can explain certain things that the movie can't because of limited time and space, but it's also a way to like promote the TV series well. Well, if you want to know more details, watch the TV series. And that's part of the thing with Macross. Has always been that way since the original. They've always done you have your TV series and you have your movie. Well, whatever doesn't happen in the movie, you can watch it in the TV series and gather all the information. But that's definitely something there. Okay. One more thing is, Jason, can you pretend to be somebody who is a Macross II is a parallel universe, is not canon, controlled opposition, and give me a question to try to challenge me on the canonicity of Macross II?
Oh God, I gotta think really hard about that. That is not easy shit.
No, it isn't. Because I know the arguments. I know the arguments.
Listen, pretend like you're a Robotech fan that knows nothing about Macross. Maybe that'll help.
Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!
Sorry, I just had to make a joke like that. I just had to.
All right, let me think. Okay. What would I ask? Okay.
You got one?
I think I have one. Let me try and figure out how to form this.
He's typing it out just so he can get his thoughts into.
Okay. Okay, let me see if I can ask this properly. Okay, so I do have a question then.
Okay.
So if I've heard that Calamari, and I've heard this from several people, and I believe I've actually read it too, where he's more or less, and I'm going to condense this, where he's said that everything is and yet isn't canon. So that said, since he had no involvement in Macross II, where would how would it all of a sudden make Macross II canon if nothing really is in the first place?
Well, you could say there's no such thing as canon for anything, right? So that's a very general statement. Because like I've heard people say, well, canon's not that important. Well, yeah, it is when, you want to talk to people about the story and explain things in detail to people, the canon is important. But for if God, repeat the question one more time. Brain fart.
Okay, well, let me go into specifics. Okay, so
Okay.
there's been, I guess, to kind of put what I'm saying in more context, it's kind of like Calamari has kind of said that, okay, so all of these series, all the series, all the movies are basically like, kind of like what we do, like with World War II movies. Everybody knows that World War II existed. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
We know that all the facts about it. There's documentaries, there's actual footage, but these Macross series and movies are kind of like a movie about a real life event, kind of like Saving Private Ryan is a World War II movie. It's did everything happen? Were those actors actually in the war? No, but they were.
It's an interpretation,
right? And so that's kind of how he takes his everything is canon, but it's not canon. Now, if you have somebody that more or less, created the series,
it was
with
his
other
baby.
people, and they're saying that, well, if they didn't work on it, how do you make that part of their canon if they didn't do any?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. That has to do with Japanese copyright law, which I didn't go into because it's just a whole mess of bullshit that I don't think anybody cares about. But like I mentioned earlier, Kawamori created Macross. He's not the intellectual owner of Macross. This is what because the way Japanese companies work, this is why, who was it? What's his face who did Symphony of the Night, Castlevania Symphony of the Night? He created the spiritual successor to Castlevania. What was that I forgot the name of that game that he made. That he put on Steam and all these other downloaded places. And I forgot his name. Not Inafune. That's not him, is it? I don't remember off the top of my head. But this is why he even though he worked directly on Castlevania, and he was one of the big, and even the creator of Castlevania, who wasn't that guy who did Symphony of the Night, it was a different guy. He can't make a Castlevania game. Why? Because Konami owns the intellectual property rights to it. So Kawamori does not actually own the intellectual property rights to Macross. He's the creator of Macross. It was all his idea, but who owns it? The company does. Which is Big West. Big West owns all the intellectual rights to Macross. So what Big West says goes. Now, they've been trying not to say directly about Macross 2 because, they want to give Kawamori freedom to make what he wants, but the thing is that what people seem to forget, Kawamori was not going to do Macross ever again. When he finished Remember Love, he said he was done. Period. End of story. What was he doing at the same time Macross is going on? Macross 2 is going on. He was doing Cyber Formula GPX. He designed the Asrada. He designed all of the race cars for that series. Who else was in that series who was in Macross? Hayami Sho, the voice actor for Max. He did Night Shumaha for that show. And he also is the narrator for the original TV series. Kawamori was done with Macross. He was done. And so Big West, because they wanted to celebrate the 10th anniversary, their intellectual property rights, because they respect Kawamori, they asked him if they could use... Well, first they asked him to come back. They asked him and Itano to come back. They both rejected him. They both rejected Big West. I said, no, we're done. So they said, okay, we're going to do this without most of the people who worked on it before. Because, what was it? Amano, the guy who created Evangelion, was one of the main animators in Do You Remember Love, by the way. Do You Remember Love? For anybody who doesn't know anything about the backstory of who actually worked on Do You Remember Love, it is when you look at it now, it's nothing but famous animators who created a whole bunch of famous series. It's like everybody came out of fucking Do You Remember Love. So the guy who created Evangelion, he came out of Do You Remember Love. He was one of the main animators in Do You Remember Love. You had Mikimoto, who was, Kawamori's friend in college. There was all Itano. There's like all these people. They were all young guys. There was all, we're gonna change the world kind of thing. And they end up going on to do their own stuff and being very popular. But Kawamori, this Macross 2 created the precedent where you didn't need Kawamori to be the guy for Macross, especially considering, Kawamori's 64, I think, 64, 65 years old now. Because he was 24 when Macross TV series came out. I think he was 24. And that was 82, right? So he's, 66 something now? Because it's the 40th anniversary of Macross. Or no, he'd be 64. He'd be 64. Big West is going to want to continue Macross as an IP in the future, because that's basically all they have. That's all Big West has is, Macross. So what they did by having Macross 2 not have anybody outside of like 3 people from the original group of staff is they said, well, even without Kawamori, we can make a Macross that is popular, because Macross 2 was popular. Contrary to popular belief, the sales of the Laserdiscs and the videotapes at the time were actually very, very good. This is another thing that's been forgotten and ignored by everybody in the modern Macross fandom, and even these people on YouTube who, talk about how Macross 2 isn't canon. They always say, Macross 2 was a failure, blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't. Even Takanashi and the guy at Big West who did that interview, which I talked about from 2014 for the promotion of the Blu-rays, even Takanashi himself said, I remember it being a hit. Because they hadn't had Macross for years, and to come out and experiment with something in the OVA format, which they'd never done before, because they'd only done the TV series and, the movie. And then they had Flashback 2012 after that, which is only a 30-minute music video about Mime and her story. But they created the precedent for OVAs, which, how many OVAs do we have in Macross now? We have 2, we have Plus, and we have 0. So we've got 3 OVAs in Macross now. They could easily do OVAs again if they wanted to. They're doing TV series and movies, which is how the original was done. But we've got 3 OVAs. We wouldn't have 0 and we wouldn't have Plus without Macross 2. 2, Kawamori has said straight out, with the release of 2, he wanted to get back into Macross. And then he came up with Plus and 7. So, and he said in recent interviews that he would like to do another Rock Band focused Macross again. Like 7. Something similar, because all of them have been female idols and no rock groups. It's only been 7. 7 is an outlier in all of this, right? Even Plus is kind of an outlier because but now that we have Zettai with Yami Kyurei and virtual idols, which I'll never forget, the first virtual idol was Eve from Megazone 23, and Eve is amazing. And another thing on Megazone 23 is that Mikimoto did all the artwork for it. So, and another good reason to watch the original Megazone 3 is because, or Megazone 23 is because of Mikimoto.
They also have the SDF Easter egg in Megazone. I
didn't notice that. I have to watch it again. Which wouldn't surprise me because a lot of the staff from Macross did Megazone 23.
Yeah. It's only there for like a very brief second or two.
Wouldn't surprise me. But that would be my response to somebody who says that if Kawamori says everything is canon but not canon. Well, another thing that Kawamori has also said is that because he wants, and this is something Big West has also been a part of and stating this as well, is that they want everybody to watch all of the Macross. They don't want to say, okay, just the movies are canon, so you don't have to watch the TV series to understand anything. They want people to watch the TV series, and they want people to watch the movies. So what are they going to say? They're going to say it's all up to interpretation, which goes back to what Kawamori said in his New Type interview last year, or maybe the beginning of this year. It was recently, for promotion for Zettai in magazines, was that people don't know the history of know all the actual events of certain historical events until many years later, and even then they don't know the whole story. So it's all up into interpretation, which is why I can't remember which book it was. I think it was the one from last year, the source book from last year, where it says that Ai Boetemasu Ka was a movie aired in 2031 to talk about the war. And that's one of the things that they've removed. I believe they removed it from the new book, which isn't in there now, because they want everybody to watch everything, because it means more money for Big West, right? So that could be kind of that's a long-winded answer to how it goes with copyright issues and who owns the actual intellectual property rights to the IP and all this other shit. But that's basically the whole general thing. You got the copyright issue because Big West owns the rights to Macross. Kawamori, and of course Big West and Kawamori want everybody to watch everything. Kawamori credits Macross II with reigniting his desire to do Macross. Itano is the one. So this is what people get wrong a lot of times, is they say Kawamori said that Macross II isn't canon. No, that was Itano who said that. And Itano has no impact on anything whatsoever. He was the guy who came up with all the massive missiles on screen at once. The Itano Circus is what it's called.
Yeah.
Speaking of Itano, a few days ago I mentioned the story about how Itano used to be a delivery truck driver.
Mm-hmm.
And people on this Discord group, they flat out did not believe me, even after I posted a website or a webpage citing the story.
Jesus, evidence right in front of their face, and they can't even accept it. Oh, that's typical modern day people.
Yeah, and it's funny because before I provided the webpage, they were the mod of this Discord group. And granted, she started as a Macross Frontier fan.
Oh, God.
But she was like, I've never heard that story. If it was true, I'd hear it more often. Blah blah blah.
No, you wouldn't, because Itano's not a big deal. Think about this. He's done very little interviews about Macross for a long, long time. In the new source book, they have an interview with him in there, which is one of the first interviews I've seen of his in recent memory. Open like that. He's old now. He's basically retired. He's not involved in this. I don't think he's been involved in Macross since Zero. I want to say Zero. I'm pretty sure he was working on Zero. But he didn't do Frontier at all. He didn't do Delta at all. He hasn't been involved in Macross in 20 stinking years. So, and he was doing other stuff in the 90s as well. He wasn't involved with, like, outside of Macross Plus, he really didn't, like, he wasn't really involved in a lot of it. I don't recall he was involved in 7 at all, because there was never any, like, scene for him to be able to do something like that, outside of the scene of Operation Stargazer where Max is flying in with his badass VF-22S. But, which is an homage to Do You Remember Love, by the way, if nobody knew that. That entire scene of Max, trying to take the reactionary bomb into the Proto-Devil and to blow them up. That whole scene of him spinning, like, doing barrel rolls and shit and launching the missiles out is a direct homage to the scene at the end of Do You Remember Love where Ichijo's trying to get up to Borudoza and kill him, right? So that was a direct homage to that. Too bad there's no Budweiser can on it. Like in Do You Remember Love. Did you know about that, by the way? About the Budweiser can?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed the cans like ages ago. It's funny, years ago, when around the time that I discovered Macross, I was like obsessed with AMVs, and I wanted to, like, I had all these like AMV ideas for Macross Do You Remember Love that never really got completed, and so I saw like the Budweiser
can flying and exploding and blowing shit up. Alright, well, let's go on to the last thing for today's stream, because this is really long, which is fine with me, but I'm pretty sure people are tired, so. But the last thing is recommended series for noobs. Jason, go. So it could be more than one series. It could be like a couple series.
Macross or just anything?
I think it was for Macross, how to get noobs into Macross.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think of, like, if you really want to start somewhere, like I used to have a lot of people always ask me, like, well, how would you watch the Macross series, and how would you do this, and how would you do that? And if someone is willing to watch everything, I would say watch it in production order, just because you'll catch all the nuances and you'll follow along with all the little things that keep getting added on to it.
Oh, you mean like watch the the OG TV series and Do You Remember Love, Flashback 2, plus 7.
Right, but that if someone really wants to spend that type of time. If you're looking to just get into it, I think you really have to start with Do You Remember Love. I mean, there's just, even though it's 1984, and if that person is younger, I think not only will they get a great movie that is timeless, but you'll also get an idea of just flawless animation.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that it's all hand drawn, and unfortunately, it's never been brought over here legally, but even people that are Macross fans, I always tell them, if you have not seen the Blu-ray version of Do You Remember Love, watch the Blu-ray, because that Blu-ray, you actually get to see the backgrounds, and you get to see a lot of that background art that you won't find in any of those bootlegs or anything like that. All of that stuff is missing, but when you watch it on Blu-ray, you see so much more detail than you'll ever see, and you really get to see how much work was put into that.
I actually have a DVD set of Do You Remember Love that is the original theatrical release, the remaster version, and it has a bonus disc, and it has a book, I think 2 booklets full of shit, like full of, Kawamori's storyboards, line arts, the actual characters, like the storyboard artwork, so like what scene is what scene and stuff like that. It's like, I had the regular HD remastered DVD. When I saw the box set at Surugaya some time ago, Like, fuck this, I'm
Mhm.
buying this. And I bought that, and I sold the remastered regular edition. Because I was like, this version is so much better, because you get the actual theatrical release, unedited. So, the entire ending sequence with the scenes from Flashback where Minmei is actually animated and singing Tenchi no Enogu is not there, because it wasn't there for the theatrical release.
Right.
So, like, and I always wanted to watch the original theatrical release, so I was like, oh shit, I better buy this. And I bought it. I'm that. And it also told me, it also gave me the information that I need to get this book, which I've mentioned in videos before, is it's from the 80s. It's I think it's this is animation special Macross, and it has an entire explanation of the Zentradi language. And I want that so fucking bad, because it only gives us a little snippet of it in the booklets for that DVD box set. And I want that specific book about the Zentradi language, because that's directly related to the Marduk language. Because the Blu-ray limited edition for Macross II explains the language structure of Marduk. And I've been wanting to do a video about the language structure of Marduk, but the problem is that because the Marduk are just basically Micronauts Zentradi, they kind of absorbed like protoculture culture, and they learned to use songs to control the Zentradi. You know, it's important that I have the Zentradi language sources down so I can compare the languages and say, okay, Zentradi is this way, Marduk is this way, this is how they're different, they're basically the same language, but there's some differences here. But, you know, that book, I found out about that through that Blu-ray set, or not Blu-ray, it's a DVD set, sorry. It's not a Blu-ray set, it's a DVD set. I really, really, really fucking want that. I found it at Mandarake. I found it on their online website, but it's expensive. It's like for one with Obi is like 2,500 yen, which is cheap compared to a lot of fucking source books that you could find for Macross. There's a few of the 7 source books are like 7,000 yen. Just like, holy shit. Like, I want the This Is Animation Macross 7 because it has the original line arts from Mylene and Basara, and also the original line arts for the Fire Valkyrie. I'm so glad the Fire Valkyrie looks the way it does right now compared to those fucking line arts. Jesus Christ. Those line arts are awful. Just holy shit, what were they thinking? Basara looked kind of cool, though. I have to admit, the original idea for Basara did look kind of cool. Mylene, so-so. I like her kind of the way she is now, but...
Yeah, those This Is Animation books and all, they're good. They are.
I have
good.
the Macross II one. Of course I would.
Especially for all the material that you will not see if you in any other books. Although I think some of the 19 Kai, I think some of that stuff is in Shoji Kawamori's design book.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I don't have his design book. I would care more about Mikimoto's art book than that.
Yeah, his Kawamori's design book is really good if you can find it. It's kind of hard to find though.
Nah, I can find it here. I'm in Japan.
Well, I mean, if you could find it, that's something I would suggest you pick up because you'll get an idea of. I mean, like if you get any of Kawamori's books, like you get an idea of his art, how the process goes for designing his characters and on and on. Same thing.
Well, I know how he comes up with the transformations for the Valkyries. He uses the Legos.
Right, he does, but like looking at his like the process, like just I'm talking about like the early sketches.
Like when he's just jotting shit down.
Yeah, just designs. and stuff that's not even in anything. Like it's got designs for stuff that is not in anything. It's just stuff that he drew out, and it looks amazing. Like some of that stuff, I'm hoping that it shows up somewhere, even in some obscure, like, 2 seconds of Macross animation. I hope it shows up.
I heard that Kawamori had like drawings of like these insectoid, bugs and all that, like when he did Macross, like the original Macross, like decades before he did Frontier with the Vajra. Is that true? Or
That might be some of the design stuff that was like, because the one thing I do like about Macross the First is a lot of the concept stuff that never got put in the cartoon was actually put in Macross the First.
Oh,
that
like
might have
Max
been,
and the
yeah, that might
Destroid,
have been,
Max and a Tomahawk
yeah,
fighting Kamajin.
yeah,
Like that I'm not sure of, but I know that, like, originally they wanted to just kind of have Inmei as kind of being like the like the Nyan delivery girl type of thing, where she would deliver stuff. That one
yeah.
section where they do that was, I think, one of the early concepts that they wanted to do.
And that's what he
Yeah,
turned Donkai into in Frontier.
Yeah.
yeah. I used to have the Macross the first manga, like the first one and the second one, and uh, this funny little story. So um, I was in college when I got um, the first Macross the first manga, and even though I didn't know Japanese, like I had to own it because it was it was a Macross manga, and I wanted to see the illustrations, and I was there in the cafeteria eating, and then this friend I knew, Brian, comes in, and it didn't occur to me until after he came in that Brian, he's a big BattleTech fan, but he didn't know about Macross and stuff like that, and so I took the opportunity to just kind of like made sure that he would see some of the illustrations of the mecha designs, and he's like his face lights up. He's like, "Holy shit! Is that like BattleTech? That's like the Lost Mech and all that." And I'm like, "Nah, dude, it's Macross. You got to check it out, and all that." So it was just great. It was one of the a happy accident that I was able to prank a BattleTech fan like that in college.
Oh, those BattleTech fans.
I know, really. Although I did enjoy going to Virtual World way back in the 90s, though. Virtual World was nice to play Battletech or Red Planet against people. That was fun. Anyway, any other recommendations, Jason, or just Do You Remember Love?
Uh, if you want to start off and kind of understand where everything came from and kind of get like the core foundation, that's the movie. Um, I know you may not like this, but I I do appreciate Frontier, because Frontier pretty much saved Macross. I mean, Zero what did not do well. That I do know.
Oh, no, it didn't.
And
And it sucks because Zero's one of the best written stories in Macross. I love Zero.
I think that Macross Zero, like, I think one of the reasons it failed was because, the people who buy OVAs, from what I understand, are like older college students, and granted, you want something that's ecchi and violent and stuff like that, and Macross Zero like really wasn't, it wasn't the typical OVA material like that. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't sell. I think Macross Zero would have done better if it was just a TV show. But when you market it as a direct to own disc, the people who are going to put money want something that's too hot for TV, to put it bluntly.
Well, we got Sarah naked, so.
there were parts about Zero that they ended up changing because of the events of 9/11.
Yeah, that is true. They did change some stuff because of
So
that.
some of the stuff that you're talking about, like some of the more gritty stuff, might have been left out because of that.
Yep,
Uh,
that's exactly true. which kind of sucks but even so, like, I still like Zero. I'm not, and like, I even did the review of Macross Zero, and I thought, like, I hadn't watched Zero for quite a while, so it was kind of fresh to rewatch it, and I still say to this day that, and this is where Frontier did something right, at least with the TV series, right? Is that they made so many deep connections directly to Zero. Like, very, very direct connection. Like, Cheryl being the granddaughter of Mao. Like, just, fuck yeah. Like, and that made people have to watch Zero. But none of these Frontier fans did in Japan because, they're fucking retarded.
Well, can I give a recommendation?
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
So, I got this idea from another YouTuber, but it actually makes perfect sense. If you know somebody who loves Cowboy Bebop, then Macross Plus is an ideal suggestion because it was done by the same people, and as in the middle of this Discord discussion, I realized that in many ways, Usamu and Spike are similar characters. They both had like an old flame, relationship, and then they had to like leave or for one reason or the other, and so anyways, and Macross Plus is kind of an ideal solution where if you know that person really loves Cowboy Bebop, say, hey, this is made by the same people. But I think that if someone really wants to get into Macross, I like to tell them that, look, I know the original SDF Macross has visual flaws, but the story is amazing. And, and once you get emotionally hooked on the story, you tend to really overlook, not even notice the flaws, So, but unfortunately, it's getting harder to do that because a lot of younger kids, they just want to see, like, recent stuff that similar to what they grew up with. So, like,
that's why parents aren't raising their kids right. Did I say that out loud? Did I say that out loud? Oops.
But yeah, it's funny because one of my best friends, Mel, she has these two kids that are about like 15 and 16, and they're big anime fans, and I tried to show them like Cowboy Bebop and Macross and stuff like that, and I remember when they saw like the Cowboy Bebop cover art for the movie, they're like, oh, that's ugly 90s stuff, we don't watch that, blah blah blah, and then they didn't like the 90s style, so I tried to get them to watch Macross Delta, and what was the turnoff for them is that they like to watch English dubbed and will rarely watch subtitles. And for them, when they saw that Macross Delta had like subtitles for the songs up top, and then you got action in the middle, and then you got the dialogue subs in the bottom, they're like, oh, that's just like way too much happening on the screen at once, and
short attention spans for these young little whippersnappers.
But I think they might have had a point. Like, I know, and this will kind of tie into how I got started into Macross. So, I grew up on Toonami and Adult Swim and watching English dubs, and when and what kind of put me off from diving deeper into Macross was, like, I did watch Macross Zero after stumbling upon AMVs for it in college, like around 2006, and that kind of sparked some curiosity. But then for a while, I kind of put off watching the other Macross series because of the subtitle overload. Like, I was so used to English dubs, and when I watched Macross Frontier, like I would turn off the song subtitles, and I kind of wish they would do that with the newer Delta like Blu-rays, because I think for me, I find it easier just to watch. I found it easier to watch Macross for the dialogue first, and then focus on the song lyrics.
After you figure out the story.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think that having having the subtitles for the songs and the dialogue at once, kind of like it's kind of like an overload.
It is.
Um,
I didn't like that either when I was doing my stream with it. Like, they had the subtitles for the song up on the top and then the dialogue down below. And it's like, do you really need the song subtitles too? It just,
yeah,
no, you don't. I thought that was too busy too. Which, like,
yeah.
I don't have Western world problems because I'm fluent in Japanese, so I can watch it raw. But you know,
Yeah, and it's funny. Thoughts about the subtitle overload came to me when I kind of dragged two friends of mine to see the Macross Frontier False Songstress with me in theaters. And I know, like, one guy, he's kind of into anime, like he loves Berserk and all that, and he's
so he's a
he loves
pleb.
some animation. But this other girl, like, she's not much of an anime fan, and um, and she did watch it a bit, but it's funny. Like, they were confused at some parts, and then like my female friend, she was like, "Oh man, Macross is like so boring." Like, this girl was like, "Oh, I'm powerless, but I can, I can at least sing or something." And I just kind of like got a chuckle out of that. I don't know, like, I don't know. She wanted to see, like, I guess she wants like a tough action, female characters that shoot stuff up and stuff like that.
Sylvie and Fairy Team. Did I say that out
So
loud?
I tried. I told her, I said we should try out Delta at least because it does have a female combat pilot.
Oh, because you know, like for me, I have to admit, Delta I avoided like the plague for a long time because my friend told me it was garbage, and my friend is a massive Plus fan, and I won't like. I'm not a big fan of Plus. I don't hate it, but I'm not obsessive with it like a lot of people are. Um, Even though I accept that it did a lot of things for conventional hand drawn animation that cannot be replicated because without Itano you just can't do it. Like the scene in the movie where Gald and the Ghost are having their like final little run before he shuts off the limiter and crashes into it. That scene with all the missiles on screen is the like it's a period of 5 seconds. It's called the legendary 5 seconds in Japanese, where it was they used I think 2 or 3 times the number of cells they normally would for that particular scene, so that they could get all of the missiles on screen, they get all the effects on screen. It was like just insane how many animation cells they used just for that 5 seconds. It was insane. So they definitely what is it? Like I won't hate on Plus because of that reason. I understand what he was trying to do, and it was the most expensive OVA made at the time. Like literally, like there'd never been an OVA that expensive ever made before. Um, because of all the CG with how new CG was to, everything. It just was. It was a massive undertaking, which is why Macross 7 suffered, because they put all that money into Plus, and then they had nothing left for 7, and 7 got a lot of rehash, which kind of sucks.
The thing about Macross Plus, too, I think, is it's kind of geared more towards older audiences, or at least for me. Like the first time I saw it, there was a lot of nuances that I missed, and and then it was only like the second or third time that I watched it that I started really taking the full magnitude, especially about the whole like domestic assault story
All
and
with
all
Galda
that.
and Myung and Isama, and that's why they kind of separated. And how Myung doesn't even tell her best friend Kate about the whole situation, and how they just keep it amongst themselves. And Isamu, like, I find it really, like, it's very Isamu-like, but at the same time it kind of felt a little weird. Well, what happened after that? Why, like, of course that was the catalyst for Isamu disappearing and, you know, leaving them behind and stuff, but, you know, that, you know, I mean, I understand they were in high school and all this other shit, but, you know, they could have, you know, explained that a little bit more, but, you know. But I won't shit on Plus. Plus is decent. I'm not gonna hate on that. I still think Zero is better. I you know, with Macross and me, it's like, it's the most obscure stuff that I find the most interesting. You know, 2, and, you know, 2 isn't really obscure, but, you know, obscure to young people. But 0 is obscure to everybody, even though with the deep connections the Frontier TV series had to it, nobody paid attention to 0. Nobody went back to watch it, even though they watched Frontier, and they're like, well, who cares about 0? We have Frontier. That's basically what people thought. And so, you know, like,
I think, come to think of it, I think one of the greatest strengths and weaknesses about Macross titles is just how they're so layered. Like, some people are just fascinated with rewatching it and seeing all the different nuanced layers, and then other people, they just want something that they can look at and just absorb, you know, a basic story right off the bat, you know.
I think the original is better for that. Like, for just, like, the random, you know, just, like, sit down and watch kind of thing. I think, like, or in general, I think the TV series, like, so it could be, you know, OG TV series 7, although 7 drags in the middle, like, you can't fucking believe. And I said that on my review of 7. 7, as much as I like 7, and as much as I'm a Max Miria fanboy, and I've got, you know, we get 3 geniuses in there. We get Max Miria and Mylene, plus Emilia later. So, you know, but the just my Genus fanboyism really, you know, it slants my view on this series quite a bit, but that's why I did my review in the way that I did, where I talked about specific episodes that I think are important to watch. I couldn't narrow it down any further than the, 20-something episodes that I selected. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like I thought, okay, maybe 5 good episodes I can find out of this, or maybe 10. We'll do top 10. That was my first thought, and then I'm rewatching the fucking series, and it's like, you know, no, this one is interesting, no, this one is interesting, no, this one is interesting. Like, in the thing is that people don't talk about how deep 7 is in this, like, they always talk about, oh, it's just about Basara singing his songs in battle and all this. No, it's not. And it's a lot deeper than that. And, like, the episode where Fujika dies and Gamini is going to take the little, like song box to his widow and his son, then he finds out that, you know, because even Fujika says before him and Gamini and Kinju go out to fight, like, he straight out says, well, my boy still doesn't call me dad yet, and he's already 2. I don't know what's wrong with this. And he's just really naive. But then it turns out his wife has been cheating on him the entire time, and the child is actually the child of the second man. And it's like, that has never happened in fucking Macross. You don't, that is so, like I didn't notice that until I did that rewatch for that particular, you know, for that review. Like, holy shit, how adult is this fucking series?
Yeah, it was very adult.
But that's something that people don't notice when they watch Macross 7. They always say, oh, Basara. It's like, bitch about Basara all the time. It's like, no. You need to watch all the stuff on the outside. Like, my favorite episodes are the Fujika episodes, because that's just fucking deep. It's fucking sad, too. But and even Gamini, you can tell, like, he's upset by that. You know, like, because
when I watched Macross 7, like, the very first time I watched it, I absolutely hated it. And then when I was rewatching several other Macross stuff, like, I just felt like, for some reason I was like, well, I've watched plenty of other Macross like a dozen times. Let me watch Macross 7 once more. And then on the second time, I loved it, and I started to notice more details. So,
I wouldn't say start with
that,
Macross 7, though. Don't start with Macross 7.
But,
Macross 7 is
I'm
one of those that you just can't. that has to be at least after you watch the original. Like, at least the original TV series and Do You Remember Love? And then you can watch 7 if you want to. Although I think you should watch Plus before that, too, because...
Well, I did watch the Macross stuff, like, in production order, pretty much. Like, when I had discovered Macross, like I said, I stumbled onto this Macross Zero. Well, actually, yeah, I think Macross Zero might have been my first Macross that I watched out of curiosity, because I had saw this AMV, and I was, at the time, like, I didn't know what Macross was, but I recognized Macross from, Robotech, the Macross saga. And I was scratching my head going, like, these F-14s look familiar. They look like what I've seen in Robotech, the Macross saga, and the show is called Macross Zero. And it's all in Japanese. Like, why haven't I seen this before? And then, I downloaded the videos and read up on Wikipedia and started going down the rabbit hole. But I think when I got to Macross 7, I had seen, Do You Remember Love and the original Macross and Plus. And I think part of it was the first time I watched it, I was pulling up these Venmo videos that were, of horrible quality. And then the second time I saw Macross 7, I was watching, like, Blu-ray rips, on these H.264 videos that I had found on, on torrents. So that made a big difference with seeing the Blu-ray quality.
I did own the Blu-ray box set too for a while. I sold it because it's really expensive and you can make some money off it. And I needed money at the time, so that was the first thing to go. But I will say Macross 7 is probably better watched without, like, the brightening up of things. Like, I think that they kind of overdid it with the Blu-rays. That's just my thought, because the first time I watched Macross 7, I actually rented the DVDs from the video store down the street. But because when you have a video store down the street and you can just rent shit, I'm just gonna walk down there and rent it. And I'm just that. I was going to Blockbuster when I was little, and I would rent video games, I'd rent movies, I'd rent all kind of shit from there. So I have no qualms with renting shit. Most people do now because they'd rather, let's watch it on Netflix, let's watch it on this. Nope, I'm not paying those people money. I'll just go rent it. And then rip them and stick them on my hard drive. And then stick them on my external hard drive. My 4 terabyte external hard drive. Which I need a bigger one. But what is it? Like, I just found, like, with the way that people criticize Macross, like, from the English speaking world, they're criticizing it for the wrong reasons every fucking time. It's always, Macross 7 is garbage because it's all about Basara, and they never talk about, the Fiji episode, or, like, more of my other favorite episodes that really, really, show you how deep the series is. Mean May Video. Mean May Video is fucking amazing. It is, and I think Mean May Video gives the precedent to, it talks about how all these things that we learn about, all these historical events we learn about over time, turn out, like, especially in that particular episode about how they were making the Mean May story, but it was all about, showing off Max and Miria to calm the citizens of City 7 down, and, they read it, and, Basara's like, okay, I'm quitting this, I'm not gonna do it, and, and
well, the thing, too, with Macross 7 though it can be a slow grind at times, especially
Oh,
during
especially in the middle when
episodes.
City 7 gets folded and is kind of
Yeah.
floating out in space. God, that is so fucking annoying.
So and the thing too is like it's not for people who are like very busy. Like I had a friend of mine who he liked Macross, but he was so busy with work, like he didn't have time to like dive into all 50 episodes of Macross 7, and
Well,
he
50,
would
54? 54 episodes of Macross 7 because of the other episodes.
Well, yeah, there's that too, but what I mean is it's kind of like the Naruto syndrome. Like, I mean, um, I saw like a few episodes of Naruto here and there on Toonami in high school and got bored with it and and was like, oh, this show isn't for me. And so, I mean, I think it's kind of the same with Macross 7. Is sometimes, sometimes you're not in a mood for watching a long-winded show. And
yeah, and that's definitely a long-winded show. But that's why,
Yeah.
I always point out why I pointed out in my review video, these are the episodes you should watch if you want to know what the good points of Macross 7 is. Because, people don't talk about, the Fijika stuff. They don't talk about Mime video and the underlying tones of both those episodes.
Yeah.
Well, the Fijika episodes, that's not underlying. That's very in your face at the very end of that second episode. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. But the underlying tones of Minmei video, one of my absolute favorite episodes is Mama, what was it? Papa Mama Aif Tatabi, is when Mylene tries to get Max and Miri to stop fighting with each other. And she invites them both to a Firebomber concert, and Basara's off doing his own thing, and Mylene is there by herself. Oh yeah, Basara is busy with trying to awaken Shibiro. That's right, but that episode, holy shit! Like you're a 14-year-old girl. Your parents are constantly fighting with each other, and because of the constant fighting and this other shit, you decide to go live on your own at fucking 14. And of course, because your father is the commander of the battle group and your mother is the mayor of the city, and the immigrants and the migrants on the ship.
Yeah, she gets her own luxury apartment and luxury like sports car.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, she's like, and this is why Basara, like, this is another thing that people miss about Basara. Like, yeah, there's that stuff where he always flies out there and trying to sing and it doesn't work on the Proto-Devil and the Barota soldiers and stuff. The thing is that ignore that for a second. Look at Basara's attitude towards Mylene. Look at his attitude towards the kindergarten. When that episode where they get a request to go sing at the old people's home, and then they have the request to sing at the kindergarten, and you see how he's like how he is with kids. You see that he's actually a very nice person. You see these things. You see how he gets angry at Mylene when he goes to save her, and then he ends up punching a couple guys, and he hates violence, and he gets mad at Mylene for making him do that, because he's saying, you shouldn't have been, sticking your nose in where it shouldn't have been. You should have, left it alone and minded your own business. And he's leading by example, and he doesn't say things directly. He says things in a very, roundabout way. And and he doesn't want to explain it to Mylene. He wants Mylene to figure it out for herself. Like, especially like in Minmei videos, another thing, why he won't play Ichijo in that movie is because he knows it's just a propaganda piece. He knows it's propaganda and military propaganda sanctioned by the military, and he wants nothing to do with that.
He wanted to be the next Lin Minmei, because he kept on looking intently on the parts with Lin Minmei when she was singing. So I mean, he idolized Lin Minmei and what she stood for. So
well, because what she did is that her voice managed to go across the galaxy, And that was always his goal. Like, even in his backstory, he went up every morning to that giant mountain, and he wanted to move the mountain with music. And you can tell that. Now, is that part of him being Anima Spiritia and maybe a descendant of the original Anima Spiritia from the proto-culture era? Who knows? Well, like, Shibiru calls him Anima Spiritia all the time, and then she starts calling him Basara because, she starts to like him. But, that's all part of that. But the thing is that people don't look at that side of Basara. They look at, he's just out there singing his song in his Valkyrie and he's not fighting, and this is boring. They don't look at the deep side of his personality. Like, there's so much to that character that gets completely forgotten because of, the outward appearance of, listen to my song.
I can see where the people are coming from when they, get tired of, or, when they get bored of Macross 7. Because, I remember when I was young and in middle school, like, I would obsessively watch Dragon Ball Z, but I didn't have a lot of media choices back then. And, when you have so few media choices, you're not going to be very picky. But nowadays, like, especially when you got so many media choices and so little time from work, people are going to gloss over Macross 7. So, it's nothing against Macross 7 personally, but it's just a lot of people don't have the time to.
Well, my main gripe is those people, these YouTubers who go out there and they, bash Macross 7 for completely illegitimate reasons. Now, if you want to bash Macross 7 because it drags, you want to bash Macross 7 because it, it's kind of repetitive in its episodic nature. These are legitimate things you could criticize. But to say, it's stupid because all Basara does is go out and sing on his Valkyrie, that's missing the entire point of, one, Macross, because they don't understand the meaning of songs in Macross. And two, they don't understand, like, they don't look at the deeper side of the characters. They just, blindly watch it, and because they have, only fan subs to work with right now, but, Big West has that new agreement with Harmony Gold, so now they're releasing Macross in the US. Which I think the second Delta movie is like the first thing on their list, isn't it? Something like that. It's actually getting like a DVD or Blu-ray release overseas.
I think the first thing that they've mentioned is 7. I think 7 is probably going to be the first release from. Oh god, what company is that? Shit.
Animigo, is it or something?
Well, Animego, I think, has Macross 2. There's like a boutique company that has Macross Plus. And then there's another one, and why can't I think of it? There's another company, Right Stuff. Right Stuff has Delta and Frontier. I think those are the only two. And 7.
Oh, okay. But they still have 0.
I'm hoping that they'll do like a theater release like they did with the
Plus movie edition.
Yeah, and the Macross Frontier movies where you can see it on the big screen, the fandom events.
Well, you know what they were doing over here is they were like locally. This is locally for me in one of the movie theaters here. Like, I think it's this month. I can't remember now. It was a while ago when I saw this, and it was on the official Macross website in Japanese. They were re-showing the Frontier movies as a double feature, I think, for like a week, and then they were doing the Delta movies as a double feature for like a week or something, or they were like doing like one a week, and at the end they were gonna do all 4 of them on at once in one day or some shit like that. So you'd be at the movie theater for like 8 hours or a fucking day. But
yeah, I think they did that. I remember when they did that for like the Lord of the Rings many years ago, and then I heard like some theaters would show like all these MCU movies, and I don't know how people would stand for like. I guess you go and take breaks or something, but
well,
like,
they do breaks, so they definitely have to do breaks.
But it was just funny to read how like a theater was going to show like 18 hours of MCU movies in a row. And,
well, this was only going to be two Frontier and the two Delta movies. Although I think they're only doing this in fucking Tokyo. Fuck Tokyo. But I think they're doing a theatrical release of Do You Remember Love? I can't remember. I remember reading it. I think it was on the official Macross website.
Yeah. The thing is, from what I understand, the international rights to Macross Do You Remember Love is like divided up between like 2 or 3 different companies.
Jesus.
So I don't think it'll ever get like a official, international release unless like some rich guy decides to like buy up the rights or it gets worked out somehow. But do you guys think that the Macross 7 Dynamite will be released through Right Stuff or whatever? Because I was like I've gotten into discussions with people like I've noticed that they don't mention like in the panels like Anime Expo panels and stuff like that they don't mention the Dynamite OVAs, and I have a feeling that they're not going to release them because of the problematic shower moments or what hot springs or whatever you call it.
Oh, the one with Irma and Basara where she's carrying him up.
Yeah.
No, I think it's even worse than that.
I think cringe, and I mean,
you know what I think the problematic scene is going to be? Is the scene with Mylene and that producer woman. I think that's the one that's going to get people.
I mean, that scene was cringe too, but the thing too is like the one with the the spring the hot springs one.
Yeah, because Irma's only like
they
12
would have to
fucking
censor
years old.
that because here in America, if you show nipples of an underage cartoon character, it's considered illegal CP and all that, and so, and it's funny, like I've gotten into debates with people like on this Discord group where they're like, oh, they don't censor, they're not allowed to censor anime or something or blah blah blah.
That's bullshit. They, and I'll straighten this out right now because I know this for a fact. I've lived here long enough to see the changes in the laws over here.
Yeah.
Because the CP law that came out that got pushed over here, where all the comic, the doujinshi writer, artists and stuff who are like suing the government over, that went into effect like 12 or 13 years ago. So I was already here in Japan when that happened. And I remember when all that hoopla started about that, and I was like, well, at the time I didn't make any deal out of it until I started working at Mandarake and I got to see, both sides of the issue. I got to see the inside workings of that company, and also I also got to see and learn about things I didn't want to learn about. And that, the thing is that now in Japan, you can't do that anymore. Why do you think Macross Frontier and Delta both aired in the middle of the night, especially Frontier, the TV series? Because I used to stay up and watch Macross Frontier on TV when it was airing. I used to stay up till like 1:30 on Saturday night to watch this shit.
Yeah, they had it at like a nighttime. Yeah, they have like the older shows at like the late night.
Oh, they still do it. Oh, they still do it even now. Like, look at the new Urusei Yatsura. That's on at like 3 in the morning or some crazy shit.
Yeah.
Like,
but I was gonna say that a few weeks ago I bought this Tenchi Muyo like OVA. It was.
Was it? Which one was it? Because there's 5 of them.
I can't remember. I think I got it in like a DVD case in storage or whatnot. But I was playing it on the background, and it was doing like all these recycled footage. And I saw like in one of the things it had Ryuko was giving like a bath or shower to what's that little like carrot character with the rabbit character?
Oh, Joki. Oh, that must have been that was probably like
it was like Ryuko, but it was like a different version that was like somewhat more human looking.
Oh, and I forgot her name.
Was that they added a lot of like CG fog and like soap suds and stuff like that. Like I got the feeling that they were, censoring
the
stuff.
Tenchimuyo OVAs are full of nudity. Oh,
yeah.
And it goes beyond that because with that period of Tenchi Muyo in the canon timeline, which is the OVAs, the TV series arc is finished. It finished with In Love 2. That was the end of the TV arc. The OVA arc has technically 7 series. There's 5 Tenchi Muyo Ryoki OVA series. The 5th series is, like 6 episodes or something. It's really short. Then there's 2 side stories to that. And one of them is the Galaxy Police GPX, which is talking about Senna, who appears in the later OVAs of Tenchi Muyo. And it's about his story with the Galaxy Police. And that's where he meets all those girls in that particular, like, what looks like Ryoki but more human. That's where she makes her first appearance. There's a bunch of light novels for those too, by the way. But
yeah, see, I mean, Japan, like in their anime, they're they're fine having casual nudity, but
not anymore though. That's been
so,
well, no. That's not the same anymore, because like if you look at, let's say, do you remember Love, and where Mime is completely drawn, outside of the lower extremities in that shower scene where they actually drew her nipples and stuff like that. That was an era where they could get away with that on regular TV. And this is shown by, there's a famous historical drama that was on TV back through the 70s and the early 80s called Hisatsu Shigoto Nin. And it was basically a story about 5 or 6 people who were living normal lives, doing their normal jobs, but they would take, if somebody was wronged and they were paid enough, they would go out and, get revenge for these people. And so in the middle of the night, they would go out and they would murder these, bad guys. To get revenge for something bad that they did to, like, regular people who didn't, who didn't deserve to be killed, right? But they would only do it for money. And so, in that TV show, there was one of the characters that was always famous, where she'd be in a little, like, bath scene, and back then in the mid to late 70s and early 80s, women could be topless on TV. Like, just normal TV. You could have women topless. So that was in an era where they could get away with that, where they were allowed to do that. But in the intervening decades, Japanese broadcast laws changed to where none of that stuff can get shown on TV. Now, if you watch the Macross Frontier TV series, there's not really a lot of scenes that are really, like Cheryl's clothing in her concerts and stuff is really risque, but she's covering up those parts, right, in general.
Yeah.
But even in that situation, because of the violence with, the blood of the Bajira, spilling on places and things like that, and also, what's his face in the very first episode getting crushed by the large Bajira, like the Bajira picks him up and squishes him to death. Because of that, it was forced to be aired very late at night so that young kids couldn't watch it. And this has been something that's been going on for quite some time. This is not a new thing. This was, because even Jigoku Shoujo, which came out before, like, Jigoku Shoujo, I think, was 2005 when it first started airing. Jigoku Shoujo was pretty violent, right? Like, if you think about, like, the first couple seasons, it's pretty violent. And that series also was late at night. Why do I know this? Because around the same time, Macross Frontier... Actually, no, it was Kistem was on TV too. It was like all these series just kind of like piled on top of each other. Like Kistem was on TV at the time. Jigoku Shoujo, the 3rd season, Mitsuganai was on at that time. You had Macross Frontier coming out that same year. It was like just a whole bunch of really crazy shit going on. All of these series were on late at night. And this was due to changes in Japanese broadcasting law. Now it's even stricter. It's far more stricter now, which is why, like, even in the Delta movie, in the first Delta movie, there's that, naked pool get together between Reina, Makina, Kaname, and Freya, right?
Yeah, but they do cover up the nipples and all that.
Exactly. And that's a theatrical movie. Now, if you think back to, actually, even a lot of times they don't even draw the nipples anymore because of the way the laws have changed.
Oh, the laws have changed in Japan as well. I thought they didn't care about like nipples and stuff. Like,
it's very different now. It's very much heavily censored, which is why, like, Minmei could have nipples, but Kaname, Makina, Reina, and Freya in their little naked pool scene in the first Delta movie can't have nipples.
Yeah.
Like, and you can even tell, like, they strategically place Makina to where her arm is crossing her chest so she can't show her nipples.
Yeah, or they have other people in the way or something. Yeah.
And Reina's, like, grabbing on Freya's boobs, right?
But the Macross 7 Dynamite, like, it was made in era where they could, like, get away with, stuff like that.
Well, like, I don't even see, like, because...
At least in Japan. But
maybe because I've been in here so long that, like, that kind of thing doesn't bother me because it's not, of a sexual nature. It's in a very specific situation. And,
But I'm just saying that I think I'm going to be surprised. Like, if they do release in America, they're probably going to have to censor it, is my guess.
Oh, they'll probably put, they'll, like, put some, like, clothing on her or something. They'll put a swimsuit on her or something. Like they did, when in Dragon Ball Z, when they covered up, what was it, Gohan's little ding-dong with a piece of ripped clothing or something. They'll probably do something like that if they release Dynamite 7 over there.
Yeah, but it's just funny because, like, in Discord groups, like, I've had, like, ridiculous arguments with people where they're like, oh, they're not going to censor the anime. They don't
they
have to.
will. They will. They have to.
Yeah, and I tried to tell them, I'm like, no, look at the literal law, because there's, the obscenity laws in America now where if it's like cartoon and, they'll charge people with felonies for having,
CP, yeah.
Cartoon crime, so, yeah. So.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be, I think they'll eventually release it because that's only like one scene, and it's not very long, so they'll probably find a way to cover it up.
And it's probably something they can censor easily. But still, it's just like, it's just one of those, controversial topics that's interesting to, argue and discuss.
Yeah. Well, I better give my recommendations, huh? Because we haven't gotten there yet. We just kind of kept going off on tangents.
Well, we can always censor some of the tangents off of YouTube,
I'm too lazy to go through all that editing. It's it's already 5:30 in the evening here, so I'm already lazy enough, and I want to play Macross 30 today. So,
okay.
But for my recommendation, it has to be Do You Remember Love? Do You Remember Love, and then watch 2, and then watch whatever else after that. But to get started, has to be Do You Remember Love? I take Jason's position. Do You Remember Love? Not only because it's, shorter than watching the original TV series, but also because the animation quality is extremely well done, especially for that era. It's like absolutely amazing. It's gorgeous. You have a lot of things that's all completely hand drawn, and CG cannot imitate this stuff. Like, you cannot, like, the way that things are done in that movie, you cannot imitate that with CG at all. That has to be done. Like, if you did a full CG remake of Do You Remember Love? Oh, it would be awful. It would be absolutely awful. Like, I wouldn't like it. I would think it was garbage. Because it's like with anything classic. It's classic for a reason. And it should be watched as it was back in the day. Just like Macross 2 or, Macross 2. Because it's canon. But, you know, it would have to be that. Now, if people are really noisy and blah, blah, blah about, it looks too old or something, I won't say Frontier. I'm definitely not saying Frontier. Well, I'd say Delta before Frontier. Just because, like, although you kind of need to know what happens at Frontier to understand the whole, like, Vol Syndrome shit in Delta. Jesus Christ. Like, this is the problem with the modern Macross, is that they're so deeply connected to the other series that take place after them that you can't just watch them in a vacuum and enjoy them. Because, like with the Frontier TV series, you can't actually enjoy that about, like, the whole episode about the bird human movie unless you watch Zero. You have to watch Zero to understand that. Like, it's just,
Well, I mean, I kind of disagree with that partly. I mean, there's layers to it. So, I mean, even if you don't know all the lore, you can at least get, like, some of the comedy and the love triangle aspects of it. And I've shown Zettai live to people who have, like, no idea what Macross is. And yeah, they don't understand, like, the name drops of, like, the Sharon Apple quantum computer and stuff like that, but they do emotionally connect with the basic, like, Hayate and Freya dynamic, and and the basic premise of, like, evil villain trying to take over the galaxy with AI drones and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's layers to it. So.
Never forget the little ghosts that fly off of the SV-303s look exactly like fucking squires. Yeah, I just had to say that because I can't let a good opportunity go to show how Kawamori's very, very, very aware of the canonicity of Macross II. I saw those when I saw those in the movie theater. I'm like, holy shit, those are squires. That was the first thing in my fucking mind when I first saw the movie. SV-303. Cool, it's a new ghost that's like an entire Valkyrie. Hey, look at the little ghosts that are flying off it. That's a fucking squire. Shit. Except for the fact that the squire has 3 little guns on it instead of the one that's on those little things. But, the squires also don't have the little wings on them because they're specifically used for space only. So they look kind of like funnels from Gundam. But,
Yeah, I was about to say, like, Gundam kind of started the concept with their funnels.
Yeah, but they had to be controlled by an AI, thing that... Well, they had to be controlled by a new type exclusively. Which... What most people don't know, which I didn't learn this until a few months ago. A lot of the things that are in the Gundam MSV, like the vocabulary, came directly from Kawamori Shoji himself. So if, like, I forgot all of the terms in Gundam that actually were because of Kawamori. And actually, Kawamori was part of the mecha design team of the GP02 in 0083.
Yeah, I was about to say he did that Gundam and Stardust memory.
Well, he didn't do it exclusively. He did the line arts for it, and then they didn't like it because he didn't like doing it because he wasn't, free to do what he wanted. He had to do certain things a certain way, and that's not how he works. He likes to have a lot of freedom in his designs, and so they kind of threw away his original sketches and he had to redo them until they were happy with it. And those sketches were then reworked by Katoki Hajime, which he gets most of the credit for Stardust Memory. But Kawamori was involved in that. Kawamori was deeply involved in Gundam that people don't realize, and so, and he was only 20 or 22 or some shit when he was working on the MSV stuff. And MSV was a special magazine that kind of, introduced new mobile suits that were supposed to be in World War that didn't show up on the TV series or in the movies. So your stuff like the high mobility type Zaku's and, all that other
yeah. He and several of the Macross gang, they had that Gundam fan magazine, right? The Gunsight
Yep.
one.
Yep. Exactly. And a lot of the ideas that, and actually, Kawamori was asked by Sunrise to like help with them, and that's where some of the deeper vocabulary, which I don't remember off the top of my head because I watched it on a video some time ago, but he actually had very deep connections to Gundam, and then he went on to Macross. But he was a massive Yamato fan, and so this is why in the original, and this is where I think this is where the original TV series has some interesting things about it, is if you watch the original Macross TV series, it's closer to Yamato than it is to Gundam. And that's because Kawamori was a fan of Yamato. He was he was involved in Gundam, he liked Gundam, but his thing was when he was younger, he used to watch Battleship Yamato all the time. So that kind of space drama thing is one of the biggest influences to the original Macross TV series, which it actually really works well, especially when you get to the end of the TV series and, when Kamajin crashes into the Macross and all this other shit, right?
Yeah, the first time I'm thinking of even the very first time I watched Zettai live, like with Ian Cromwell, I got vibes of those villains from Spaceship Yamato, and who is that? The main Commander Zor, I think, of that Captain Harlock movie.
I've never bothered to watch Yamato or Harlock or any of that stuff.
Oh, you're not familiar with Harlock?
I know the name. I know he's super popular. I just never bothered to watch it. I've never got involved in that stuff.
I was gonna say, watch Captain Harlock in Arcadia of My Youth. At the very least, fast forward to the final space battle. He goes against this guy, Commander Zor, I think is his name or something. But he just Ian Cromwell has a lot of similar vibes to.
Wouldn't surprise me because Kawamori's a Yamato fan.
Exactly, and Yamato and Captain Harlock are part of the Legiverse.
Well, I think we've gone way beyond the time I want to actually take for this. So, it's almost 4 hours long. I hope I have. Yeah, I wonder how big this file is going to be.
It's 1:40 a.m. for me. So.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But still, it's fun to talk about Macross and
Yeah. I'll make sure to, for the next one, to be a little more concise about time and stuff, and we'll limit the time of this, but once people get started on talking about Macross, I think, this should show people that are going to watch this that Macross is something that you can just talk about and talk about and talk about for hours and hours on an end because it's just so deep. And you just go off on tangents all the time. But we went through everything, all the plans that I had for today. So that's good enough. But anyway, I'll definitely have to do a podcast again. It won't be this fucking long. Don't worry.
And just bleep out anytime I mention, Robotech or something,
Yeah, I'll have to censor the whole video after that. So just delete it. I delete. No. But I hope everybody who will actually sit and watch the whole fucking thing, or at least part of this video, will maybe if they want to join in on a video, or join in on a little podcast thing, we can, get people involved, get people talking. Hopefully, I was hoping one particular person, another YouTuber, you can't unwatch it, would have showed up, but he didn't. Because I wanted to talk Macross II with him, but hopefully maybe in a future video I can do a full, anybody, I made that little short video saying any Macross II canon denier can come on and let's have a war. Let's have our own little battle about between the Marduk and the nuns, because nuns started in Macross II. So if anybody likes Frontier and you see nuns, you watch Delta, you see nuns. Anything with nuns on that started in Macross II. Never forget that.
Who are you trying to get into a Macross II debate with again?
Everybody. Anybody who's a denier.
I thought
Anybody
you
who's a
mentioned someone
denier.
I thought you mentioned someone specific earlier. That's why I was asking.
You can't unwatch it. I mentioned him.
I don't know how he feels about Macross 2, but I know he loves to diss on Macross 7.
Well, I can fight him on Macross 7 too.
But I know he loves to do sarcastic gigs too, so like, pitch it on that on a sarcastic level, and he'll probably be down for something.
I'm too serious about this shit. Anyway, that'll be the end of this stream. I'm glad you guys came out to hang out with me for this almost 4-hour freaking stream. Or not stream, but
fun. It was fun.
But we can, like, shoot the shit about Macross anytime. But I don't use mainline social media. I only use alt tech, and I only use alt tech messengers like Session. So unless you use that stuff, you won't know who I am, and you won't be able to talk to me. But if anybody wants to come in, we'll probably do another thing like this and talk about other topics. Because there's a whole lot of shit to talk about Macross that nobody wants to talk about. And having a conversation with many people, well, like a couple extra people, because I think if we had 4 people, it'd be like total, like, there'd always be somebody who's going to be really quiet through the entire thing, right? But this is open invitation. Anybody come out, watch, want to talk Macross, we'll talk Macross. And we will enjoy the conversation, and we'll go into the deep lore shit. If there's any misunderstandings, I can correct you. Or anybody who's here who is as knowledgeable as I am can correct you, and we can, get people to understand what Macross really is. And we won't, outside of the Macross II deniers, because the Macross II canon deniers piss me off, and I will drop the gloves against them. That's you say Macross II isn't canon, them's fighting words. So, if anybody wants to, get involved with that, join in, and we'll have a fight over it, because I've got all the evidence just sitting right here. So, I hope people who watch this enjoy it, get an idea of what like a real full Macross conversation sounds like. And I know this is really long-winded, but that if anybody knows my videos, I'm long-winded. In whatever video I've done. So I hope everybody, watches this, or at least like takes the time to watch the entire thing, like over a period of days, it doesn't matter. And get to actually learn some stuff about, all kinds of stuff Macross. So, anyway, that'll be all for this podcast. We'll do another one in the future. Please, find me on Gab, Unkokishi, and at Unkokishi, and find me on Gab, and lots of other interesting things I post there. You can, get a hold of me there and drop me a line. And if you want to join in a podcast, I can work out a schedule to have somebody come in and, just shoot the shit about Macross, because it's fun. And Macross is the greatest thing in Japanese animation. So, that'll be all for this. And see you in the next video whenever I get the time to make it.